Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to the season 4 of the Black Sails rewatch. It's been a while. I got sick basically, and I'm kind of sick, I guess, and I'm recovering from that sickness, you could say. But we're here, we're back. It's me, and I'm here with Kyle Entertainment.
No, he's a liar. He's not here with anybody. It's all a figment of Ari's imagination, as am I. But anyway, I'm here. How long has it been? For a
Too long.
recording, it's been quite a while, but for I think we're like 3 weeks late for the people
Yep.
or something like that.
Something I have no idea.
You
Something
know, you know
too
something
long.
actually, because I was re-listening to part 3 right before this. And I noticed, and previously when I've searched EliteAri, your channel didn't pop up, but today when I searched it, it did pop up.
Oh wow.
So it must be making uh, headway in the algorithm.
How exciting.
Unless the people are all on EliteAri already. They're all already subscribed,
Yep.
and they're all already liking the video and watching
Mm-hmm.
all the other videos. So
Yeah.
this doesn't mean much to them. But anyway, what a meaningless anecdote to start off
Is this
our
the
season 4
Is this the
review.
first video where we've read like comments and stuff? I don't even remember because I think we recorded the first three.
Actually,
And yeah.
hold on, I know the exact answer
Mm.
because we mentioned it at the beginning of part 1. When at the beginning of part 3, we say that like an hour beforehand, part 1 had gone out.
Oh,
So,
okay.
and there probably weren't a lot of comments at that time. So
Yeah, yeah,
we haven't discussed any comments in depth or anything. If you
yeah.
had some written down you wanted to bring up,
No, not at all. But they're great. I've been
we've
reading
been
them.
getting a bunch of
Yeah,
them. Yeah,
it's been so
I
good.
read most of them.
Yeah,
I
I
can't
read
remember
them
if I
all.
responded to some of them or not. But yeah, lots of comments, lots of engagement, lots of paragraphs.
Yep.
We like them all. We encourage them all.
Yes.
Actually, last time we kept saying that everybody should comment whether or not they like British boob Eleanor or pirate
Oh, yeah.
Eleanor, and nobody commented about that. I was disgusted,
Yeah.
disappointed. It was deplorable. I actually have in my notes here in the introduction to reiterate that British boobs are bad.
Wow. All right.
It's going to be my slogan throughout the rest of my life.
Perfect. All right. Wait,
Let's get back on track here,
Yeah,
Ari. I
sorry.
can't
Let's
believe
do
you're
it.
derailing us like
Let's
this.
do a recap of season 4 because it has been a while since we watched it. Even we ended last season with a clear victory for the Maroon Island against Rogers' forces. Then this season opens with Flint and Silver returning to Nassau, resulting in a very clear loss against Rogers, and everyone thinking that Silver is dead because he fell into the water during the battle. The survivors of that battle then meet up with Billy on Nassau, who has been building up the legend of Long John Silver
Ooh,
and commanding his
Billy.
own band of pirates on
Ooh.
Nassau. We then find out that Rogers isn't supposed to be in Nassau. The war between England and Spain has started again, and he was commanded to return home, but he refused. The men that remain have sworn loyalty to Rogers specifically. Then Billy starts a revolt against Flint
Ooh.
and the Maroons, and by extension, all of the slaves on Nassau. Jack, Anne, and Teach chase Rogers and then lose to him, and then Teach is killed. And there's a great scene there. The alliance of pirates and Maroons fight Rogers' right-hand man Berenger in Nassau town, and they win. Then Julius, a slave, starts a slave revolt on Nassau. Rogers brings the Spanish army to burn down Nassau, and Eleanor dies in the process, and Marty is captured by Rogers, kind of. Then Max, Anne, and Jack go to Boston and negotiate with Eleanor's grandmother about establishing control over Nassau. Then Rogers, Flint, Silver, and co. all go to Skeleton Island, also known as Treasure Island, to exchange the treasure for Marty. And things go awry there. A lot of nonsense on that island. And in the end, Rogers is defeated. The treasure is intentionally lost. Flint gives up on his war to reunite with Thomas, and Max takes over Nassau by way of Featherstone. And a bunch of other stuff, I'm sure. But that's a long recap.
Boo, Billy. Boo. We hate Billy here. Boo.
Do we? Do we
I'm
hate
sure
Billy?
we'll talk about that. Hey. Yes, we do. Ari, you idiot. It's not Boston, it's Philadelphia, but Eleanor's family is from Boston.
It's not actually in Boston? I had no idea.
No. Philadelphia is right near Boston. It's like up a river, Lamau.
Right.
but it's all in the north. I don't. A big a big part of that is called New England. That's not a state name. That's like an area. But I don't
Right.
even think Philadelphia is in New England, but it is right next to it. So they weren't in Boston. But last time I was saying Boston over and over again, which as I was
Yeah, got in my
re-listening,
head.
I was cringing at my wrongness because it is
Wow.
indeed Philadelphia. This is actually said in a line by Eleanor's grandmother and one that I've quoted and we will talk about in due time. I wrote down as you were saying, boo, Billy, boo, it's not Boston.
Terrible.
And it has been a while since I watched these episodes.
Yeah.
Because obviously we had the break. Now I binge watched them all. I binge watched like 7 in one day, I think.
Yeah.
And I've sort of chronicled how I've watched them throughout this series. And I had like a big little break in the middle of season 3, and but this one undeniable this season. You just got to watch it all at once. Poor Ari, I think you watched most of it at once and then didn't watch the last episode
Yeah.
until before, like your sickness broke it up.
Yeah,
So
I
you
watched
had like
like 2
3
days
weeks
ago.
between. Yeah. But yeah, best season, Lamau.
Yeah. So overall thoughts.
Yeah. Best season, Lamau. I
Yeah.
don't know what else to say. Eleanor's grandmother, the best. Actually, we'll rank who's the best at the end when we do our tier lists.
Yep.
Well, we've already done them, but
We
when
haven't
we
seen
share
them
them
yet.
with everybody. But yeah, everything about it is so good. We love it. I don't know how to continue without getting specific.
Yeah.
It's great. What
I
do you
agree.
think, Ari?
I think it's great.
Not great, the best.
I would say it's one of the best seasons of anything I've seen. I think it's really good. I think the ending is also really good. Like it's just really solid and it ties up the show very well. I like it. Best season of the show, definitely. Which I also don't think I thought that initially. Like I think this has changed. But yeah, it's great.
There's an interesting thing where the last 2 episodes, I don't know if they're as good as the rest, but we'll talk about that.
I think it's
which
the opposite.
is definitely alarming and absolutely a new thing for me.
Yeah.
But we will talk about that when we talk about very specific scenes.
Okay. Yeah. Interesting.
Just
really
before we get into the next part, I guess this is the best time as ever to make fun of Ari for all the things he forgot that I mentioned last time that we were going to make fun of him. First of all, we've got Eleanor's grandmother, Ari.
Yep.
She exists.
She
Did
does.
you remember her when you saw her? Did you remember the scenes when you saw them, or was it all new to you again?
I didn't remember. The only scene I remembered of her was like when I heard that she laughed when like Jack said something about reading a book, and I was like, oh, that's her. I remember her, but I don't remember anything else besides that scene.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
We'll talk about her later. We don't want to actually talk about it yet.
Yes,
Just
yes.
make fun of Ari. But when you saw it and you saw every scene, you're like, God damn it, that Kyle Entertainment, he's right about everything.
I guess. Yeah. I mean, I liked every scene that she had. I thought they were great.
Liked is a weak word. We will discuss this later. Ari said he didn't remember where the Flint plot went at all in season 4. This is something he said last time. Did that come back to you? Were you surprised?
Not at all.
Was it all new again?
I was on the edge of my seat seeing how we were like all the way up until the only thing I remembered was that he like ends up with Thomas at the end. Kind of.
Potentially.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah. But other than that, I didn't remember anything. I was really on the edge of my seat wondering what was going to happen, which is crazy to think about. But yeah.
The next one I got is you speculated that you had a vague memory that Alfred Hamilton revealed himself to be the death figure that Flint was seeing all the time. And then I initially wanted to call you an idiot, but then I started second guessing myself and was like, maybe that did happen. Turns out that did not happen.
No, I don't know where that came
Alfred
from.
is mentioned at one point.
Yeah.
When obviously, because that's how Thomas ends up there, if he is there. But again,
yep.
Hold the brakes, right? We ain't talking about that yet. Ari didn't remember Flint's final speech. My goodness gracious me.
Wild. That's a great speech. All right, let me just say that right now.
This speech and it not quite hitting as hard as what I'm talking about when I talk about the last 2 episodes, maybe not being as great as I remembered.
Interesting. Okay.
But we'll talk about that, and then my last one is just bad British boobs. Also, Silver's beard still sucks. And those were all of the make fun of Ari points.
Yes, thank you.
I don't know where that leaves us in the structure. Take it away, Ari.
All right, well, Standout Moments is next. And I have a bunch. So I guess I'll like go through them really quickly. I mean, there's a
Yeah.
lot. Essentially, everything is a standout moment in the season. But um, I have this list here. So the swimming and underwater scene at the beginning of the season, where like Silver's stuck and he's like trying to get up to the surface. I thought that was cool. There's this scene where Jack and Teach are in a room alone, basically, and they're talking about how
Yes, this is the first one on my list. The
yeah,
Swan talk with Vane. Great scene.
yes, talking about the bird and how Blackbeard is having this philosophical talk about like, oh, what could this bird be? And he's like, yeah, it's dinner.
Yeah.
Love that. Good scene. In the this is a kind of a weird thing, but in the final 2 episodes or so, they introduced this new song that's kind of like, I don't know. It's like it's just sad, or like, I don't know if it's sad. It's just like this weird like instrumental music, and I like that a lot. Like if you want to hear it, I think it's at the beginning of episode 9. I think it's very clear, like when you got those silver flashbacks. With Flint.
I
I
don't
thought that was
remember
really
it
good.
specifically, but
It's great. Go check it out afterwards. Teacher's death, of course. That whole scene, fantastic. We can talk about that as we go. The fight with Berenger in Nassau, I thought that was just really well done. Like the scale of the battle there, I didn't remember it being so grand and so well done. The after that battle, where the Nassau town is left in chaos, there's like this 3-second shot that I tweeted out a GIF of, which is like a British soldier running from the pirates in Nassau, and you see behind him like all these like savage pirates like chasing him. Such a cool 3-second shot. That definitely stood out. We get what is this one? Oh, the scene where you've got Flint and Eleanor working together to like shoot Rogers' ship, so he like backs away basically. And you got like Rogers in that scene just continuing to go forward and never looking back to the maid who's like trying to tell her that Eleanor is doing this out of love. Great scene. And then Rogers sitting with Eleanor's dead body, and then he like hallucinates her looking at him and crying. Great stuff. And then similarly, when he's talking to Marty, and you see the knitting of this like silhouette in the background. So cool. We have so much. Like 4 more. Jack putting aside his legacy for the sake of Anne. Like that scene when they're on the ship and they're like talking about that. Thought that was great. And then similarly, Max and Anne talking and holding hands and talking about there's nothing more important, or nothing important that does not include you. Great stuff. I can't believe there's this much. The flashbacks of Silver and Flint training intertwined throughout their fight. I thought that was really well done. And finally, the conversation with Flint and Silver, where you have Silver talking about waiting weeks, months, years, and then you've got Flint talking about dragons, and it's great. That's it. That's every single moment.
Talking about not dragons. The dragons are fake.
Yeah. Talking about these dragons that England thinks there is.
And Ari, at least you got the best scene in there, but we'll talk about that. That was the Max one for the people not paying attention.
Right.
Mine are all quick and not like the best scenes at all, just ones I noted down. So first I had Jack and Teachers talk about the Swan. I don't think the point of that is like what makes the scene great. I think it is like the slowness and the delivery of the monologues. And sort of the imagery they create. It's just like, I don't think it's like, oh, and then it was dinner now, because I don't want to say it's a lame joke or a lame payoff. Yeah. I've definitely heard that exact like joke point. It's not really a joke. It's not really a point. It's kind of in between before and something else. I'm thinking Dragon Ball Z abridged, but that might not be it. And I would almost bet that that's not it. But that exact scene, but it's the method of it, how it all unfolds. It's just such a tone and an atmosphere to it that's fucking sick, bro. The rest of them are just like Jack's funny, Max impression, Lamau, that sure was funny. Which is another thing you also didn't remember last time, but because I like parroted it to you and you just looked at me like a fucking idiot.
Wait, which one are you talking about? When does it happen this season?
When Jack's on the boat and he's like, oh no,
oh yes,
he does the accent and everything. You remember? You remember now,
of course.
Everything to do with Eleanor's grandmother. Who would imagine? As I was watching, because right before this, as we were preparing for this, I was taking some notes about some Eleanor, not some Eleanor scenes, Eleanor's old news. Get rid of her. Max and Eleanor's grandmother, whose like name is like Marion or something. Eleanor's grandmother. I was taking notes and I was like, man, I got to edit that tier list and put Max ahead of Flint. What a fucking loser this Flint is. Max is the greatest character of all time. But then I decided that that's not fair because I've just watched a bunch of her scenes
Mm,
and they were out of context. So we held off on that. But my goodness gracious me, every one of these Max scenes from about, I think they're all in episode 7 and 8. And then there is one in the final episode that I had actually forgotten about because I thought how it all unwinded was that she denied Eleanor's grandmother and then they just left. But
mm,
actually, they go back and it is actually her plan that they end up actualizing. I
yep.
thought she had just left them back in Philadelphia and did her own thing. But that's not what happened. That is how I remembered it. But nonetheless, we'll talk about all that later. Um, I think it is. This might be. This is also in episode 8, I think, which is the ending of the episode where it's basically the big Israel Hands monologue about how the chest ain't in the ground no more. Uh,
Mm.
the greatest thing I ever saw. There's so many monologues as they're heading to Skull Island that are so good because the next one is Flint describing Skull Island, and
Oh,
that's
it's
actually
so
the last
cool.
one I have written down. But so when he's talking, it's not Dobbs, but he looks like Dobbs, but he's not as big of an idiot as Dobbs. I can't remember his name though.
I got no
Um,
idea.
yeah, but Flint's last ally at the end, who he takes to Skull Island with him. What happens to this dude? Does he die in there? Yeah,
Wait, he
Flint
shoots
shoots him
him.
because he
Yeah.
jumps. Yeah, because he jumps out to try and shoot Silver. Um, crazy stuff. But yeah, those aren't really representative of my favorite scenes. I guess they are because I mentioned every scene with Eleanor's grandmother. But anyway, those were some standout scenes.
Perfect.
At least those are the ones I wrote down.
Well, first up, Eleanor. Do you want to talk about Eleanor?
I think we've done Flint at the beginning every time, but
Yep.
we're switching up today. Ari says there's a method to this madness.
Oh
I
boy,
trust
not
him.
really. Eleanor. Okay, well, she's pregnant. Which puts her in a
Yeah.
very terrible scenario, I guess, this season, where she's like left with two impossible choices, which is like either she stays in London, and her, no, sorry, she leaves to London and her
Yeah,
husband
London.
suffers, or she stays in Nassau and her child will suffer. So that's terrible. But other than that, I don't know what to really say about her pregnancy. It obviously gets revealed to
Yeah.
Rogers much later in a terrible situation. But that's burdening her. Trying to see what else. Eleanor is also sick and tired of men using her. She has a conversation with Flint about it, where she's talking about how her father, Mr. Scott, Vane, and then Flint, they're all using her. But then Flint brings up is Woods Rogers. Is he really so different from the rest of us? What do you think about that? Is Rogers has Rogers been using her? Like what's going on? Obviously he loves her, but
Yeah, there's like a dichotomy because initially it's like basically the meme is that it's obvious to everybody that Eleanor's using him. And now obviously
yeah.
when Eleanor says that, it's like sort of she's a bit pissy. Um, it's sort of
Mm,
her looking outward when obviously she has used all these men as well, basically.
yeah.
Um,
And
it
these
was a
men
push and
haven't
pull.
exclusively used her either. Like they all love her in their own way.
Well, it depends what they're using her for the things that they want. With Vane, it was for them to actually be in love. For Flint, it was as a
Mm,
partner and things like that. Um, I think when we think about it, it's more it's almost a sexist thing of like, yeah, Eleanor's like we view the men as their purer ambitions, and Eleanor's sort of jumping between them, which she does do, especially at the end of season 2. Um,
mm,
but yeah, I don't think that's supposed to be like a definitive factor or something that the prescription or description of the narrative.
yeah.
Um, I think it's just Eleanor is tired, and she feels kind of helpless again and at the whim of men. Um, when she is
Mm,
kind of trying to end it all at this point, because eventually, because you mentioned in the point beforehand about how holy shit, my mind went blank completely about what I was going to say. You
pregnancy.
mentioned, that she's diverted between her son and betraying her kid or betraying Woods Rogers, but eventually she comes up with a plan to do neither, which is to get the cash and then run away because he's got all the debts. He can pay off his debts and they can live a relatively normal life in London or whatever, or wherever they go. If they
Mm,
go to Boston or Philadelphia. But yeah, and then obviously doesn't want to do that. And this
yeah.
all sort of convalesces in when she dies and what she asks Flint, but I think you're probably going to get there. So,
You know what? I don't actually have a note on that. We should talk about that.
well, Eleanor ends up dead because
Yeah.
and it's the cutest thing ever. Her and Flint end up on the same side again one more time. It's interesting. There's a bunch of this stuff from like I'd say the first 6 episodes that I were all hodgepodged in my brain. I feel like it was the stuff I least remembered from the entire show. Now that might be because last time I probably binge watched them all in a day or something again. But the Billy conflict stuff at the beginning was something I didn't remember too much. I think I remember saying in one of our previous episodes that I had a vague memory of Billy standing on a hill and then getting betrayed. And I thought it was by the Ann boy, who is still a character, though he dies here. Who is he's at the brothel when Anne is like having a crisis or whatever,
Yes,
and
yeah.
they nearly sleep together. I forget his name. He says his name in that scene. That's kind of a point of the scene, but I've forgotten Lamau. But actually, he doesn't betray Billy in that moment. He's like, "This isn't fair" or whatever. And I like that character moment, and especially for Billy. But that was one of the things I didn't remember. And basically, all the Eleanor stuff that leads up to her death, I didn't remember. I didn't remember that she was pregnant.
Yeah.
I didn't remember. There's a bunch of Max scenes that I didn't remember at all. Some of which I really want to talk about later, especially the one of them in the fort. That is referenced in the greatest scene of all time. That we'll talk about with Max and Anne in the snow. But eventually she's separated. This, and you mentioned this. I think in your standout moments, the scene where Rogers is on the ship and she's firing them at him, and he's being told that she's pregnant or whatever. Or does she say that? I don't remember. Or she's avoiding saying that. The tension in that scene is so good. A lot of the execution of all of the scenes in this season are so good.
Yeah.
I feel like for everything, like they have every end of the episode is so great. We talked about the Israel hands, it ain't in the ground no more, and you zoom into the fucking chests under a bunch of other chests, and the music swells, and you're like, this is the greatest thing I ever saw in my life. And then the next episode is Flint. Maybe this is the same monologue, the Flint one about Skull Island and how scary it is. Because it might go from the Flint segment talking, it does. It goes from Flint talking to the one dude that ends up becoming his final partner, and then you cut because they're eating in the quarters or whatever, and then it cuts over to Israel Hand sitting with Silver, and they're kind of looking over at each other. And then these both do happen at the end of episode 8, I believe. But yeah, and then there's an episode beforehand where Jack is just escaped from everything that he goes to at the beginning, and he's on the beach, and Flint is also there. And then Flint is like, "Oh, we've agreed, Eleanor and the cash." And he basically has a monologue about how Woods Rogers is not going to agree. And then it all builds up. And the way the Jack actor acts in that scene, as he's like, his closing one of his eyes because it's all fucked up. And he's like, his speech pattern is a little different. And the fucking zoom out as the Spanish fleet comes into the harbor. And it's like, and the dun dun. And it's the fucking greatest. It's just the execution of all these scenes. And I feel like it is true for every scene, not just the episode endings. But they hit like the stride, and they peaked.
Yep.
And taking their time too, which is even evident in like the Blackbeard death scene, where it's like it lets things sit. The Blackbeard monologue about the swan that we kind of already talked about just lets it sit, and what a television program. Now, what the fuck are we actually talking about? Eleanor is dying.
Yep.
She dies because that Spanish fleet he brings in, this fucking bastard. It's a big meme. His ambition crushes him. It costs him everything he loves, and then he takes it out in the world. We're not talking about Rogers yet, though. But he ends up getting inadvertently his wife killed because she's killed by a Spanish soldier. She gets shot, right? And then she escapes the burning building.
Yep.
And
Buddy dies.
So it was one of them Spanish bastards. Now, I thought she died earlier. I think she dies in episode 7, or is it 6?
Oh, God, I don't know.
I think it's 7, because 6 might have been what I had thought previously. But then obviously she is in 2 other scenes where it's her body and the knitting one, which are 2 scenes you also already mentioned. So she's in every episode Hannah knew still. I think I liken this to a Sopranos character that I also thought died earlier in the final season. And then I was like, man, the rest of the show how does it exist without them? They're such central characters. Actually, they died later, and then they have reappearances sort of after they're dead. But anyway, Eleanor's death. Oh, and we were tying this into Roger's stuff because it was like the conundrum, and because Flint lies to her in the end because she asked, "Did my husband send them?" Because that's like her big conflict about whether or not her husband would be so stupid as to send the Spanish army in or
Mm.
whatever, and he lies to her and says no. Because it's all started because I said it was cute that Flynn and Eleanor teamed up again in the final season, and how I'd forgotten most of the stuff, like the end of the episode where they're on each side of the bars and he goes over and he's there with Silver. Um, I remembered it as I saw it, but this all began because I talked about things that I'd forgotten. See, we're going places, Ari. We're bringing it
Yes,
full circle.
progress.
These tangents have points. Um, but Eleanor, uh, she died. It was sad. Um, did you have any thoughts about Eleanor?
Uh, I have one point about Eleanor that's a bit more general, I think, which is about how a lot of characters in this final season come to the same conclusion, which is interesting. Which is that
Yeah, I
to
think I
like
know
to
the conclusion.
not to sacrifice what you love for the sake of what you want to achieve, basically.
It's the
Um,
gut storyline.
is it the God story? I guess it is. I
Yeah, he has
guess
to
I
give up on his
kind of.
ambition
I
to kill
guess yeah.
Griffith
Well,
McCasker.
we can't. The story's not over yet, so we can't conclude that.
Ugh.
But or maybe the God storyline. But yeah, we have it with Eleanor. Obviously, when she clearly regretted it, she wanted to get out of there with Rogers and her baby, and that would have been good. We get it with Anne as well. Obviously, she
And
just wants to
Max,
be out of
yeah.
there. Max, that's probably the clearest one. She just wants this all to be over.
Well, Flint might be the clearest one.
Well, not until the end. Like he didn't. I
Oh
guess he
yeah,
didn't have the option, but in the end, yeah, his story ends like that. Who else is there? Silver. That's obviously his big thing. He wants to go with Marty
yeah.
instead of this war. It's crazy. It happens with everyone. All
This is
coming to
like
the same
this
conclusion.
is like the massive thematic conflict. I feel like in most stories this ends up being the case where it's a more human, it's a more every person sort of ending because I could see there being disagreement with the theme in this regard of sort of like you can't give up on the fucking revolution because in the end the revolution should be more important than any singular person's love. This is actually the ending of Casablanca,
Hmm.
which we were just covering on movie night over on the secondary ENT channel. Spoilers for Casablanca, Ari, you're being forced to hear them.
Yes. Okay.
It's actually the opposite of this, where there is sort of the love story is broken up at the end, so that the other man and the girl can get on a plane and go to New York to help end World War II. And like the film has been building up you to care about the relationship, and then in the end, the main character makes the decision to forego his relationship and his personal happiness. And one of the famous lines at the end of the movie is the happiness of three people really doesn't amount to much in this world, or something.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, that's kind of the opposite. I think that's the only story I've ever seen do that because most of the time it is like because that's something that most people individually are not going to fight a revolution in their time to overthrow the British Empire because the fucking we got to free the slaves and all women are oppressed and we aren't free to live our lives because England is evil.
Hmm.
Most people aren't going to fight this revolution in their lifetime. What they are probably going to do is fall in love and then have sort of maybe an ambition or a career ambition pulling you away from that. Like if you have to move countries or something for a job, and that would mean breaking up with your girlfriend or something. This is a just like inspired the Amazing Spider-Man 2, Ari. Remember that movie?
Yep.
These are actual like conflicts that people will actually face in their lives. So it's more relatable and it's sort of like a I think this is I think this is kind of one of the points of Mad Men. We're jumping over. But Mad
Oh
Men
my
is sort
goodness.
of the philosophy of advertising that Don Draper implies is sort of you have to tell people that what they're doing is right and they will like love you, and that's the best way to like the people's heart through ads or through stories, because most of the time when they're talking about ads, it's sort of a metatext for talking about stories as a whole and sort
Hmm.
of Mad Men in a metatextual way. We do have to talk about metatext again, as we did last time, Ari. We've got some
Yep.
things to say about that, but much later. Uh,
Yep.
but yeah, so my Mad Men point, what did I just say? Oh, that people like to hear what they're doing is the right way, and I feel like if you're like a parent and you've got three kids and you're married to your husband and you're watching Black Sails and you're loving it, and the message at the end is to cling to the people that you love because they are what truly matters. That brings a tear to your eye, and you put your hand over your heart and you're like, man, that is what
Hmm.
matters, and it resonates. It is interesting because Black Sails seems to thrive on the alternative. You You believe with Flint the entire time. Fuck England,
Yeah.
we're gonna go to war at all the costs. But you are exhausted at the end. After like you've gone back and forth. Initially, Maddie thinks Silver is dead, and now Silver thinks Maddie is dead, but she's actually alive, but she's a hostage. But this could all be for naught because fucking this prick Wiz Rogers is executing people on the fucking deck, including Kofi, her main guard dude. Yeah, and it's like, and you feel exhausted once they're all back and once they win in that final battle and Rogers has been defeated. And you're like, do we really want to just start this all again as we move on to the next stage of this war that is going to be the third stage in a 50-stage war where we could all die again and some of us will die, and it's sort of like puts it into perspective. Um, but there's kind of our big thematic discussion because at the end, all the characters do, and you would assume the endorsement from the narrative is to choose love over ambition in a sort of way. My Casca video, the first video ever on the new channel, which is my main channel right now, has a big part about this, about how the message is kind of love conquers all in the end, and love over ambition, tying it all together, I guess. But Eleanor, Lamau, what do you? I guess this is out. You're probably gonna have to cut this out and say theme for a second. So do you want to comment on this theme before we go back to Eleanor?
I think I just agree with everything you said. Just like a random question is, when you were watching these like final few episodes where you got Flint and Silver very at odds with different goals, whose side were you on? Like, who are you rooting for?
Oh, this fucking Silver prick is a bastard, and we hate him.
Oh,
and we love
so you were rooting against the theme of the show. Okay.
Yeah, kind of, and it's.
I think I agree. I was on Flint's side the whole time.
That is interesting because I feel like I agree with the message come the ending.
Yeah,
but I feel like it's all a positioning thing. Like Flint is the underdog there. It's just him and a one guy against Silver and the whole crew, and then we've still got Rogers over there, so it could be a positioning thing. Plus, we all like Flint more. Let's not pretend. I'll beat up the biggest Silver fan in the world right now. So yeah, there's a lot of biases for it just to be purely like a thematic analysis of like because we see Flint have his happy moment, and that would sort of win over even the most hardened sort of Flint fans. The interesting thing is whether or not like the endorsed message isn't the immoral one, which is there comes a whole lot of thematic baggage that's very interesting to think about like, well then from that perspective the moral way is war, and there's sort of a colloquial kind of assumed understanding in society. I think we've gotten it through our heads now that like war is something bad and not to be hoped for, and to instigate more war to be the moral action is a very interesting thing to think about. Yeah. Some wars justified, Ari? What a question. These are the questions Black Sails poses and explores through its interesting thematic exploration. Those are some lines for some video essays. I can make them up off the top of my head. My goodness, Ari. If only I could make a video now.
That would be great. Hey, you made a Black Sails video.
Yeah. Any video I'd be happy to make, all right? It's been a month and a half.
Oh boy. Same.
Yes. Do
thematics.
Themes. Are we done with that theme stuff then? We'll probably come back to it a little bit when we're talking about Flint and Silver and the such. I definitely have more to say about Eleanor, but I don't remember exactly where to go.
Well, I've got nothing else, so anything else.
You got nothing else on Eleanor?
No, not specifically. I guess I have this one like meta thing, which is that she says, amazing this place. It somehow leaves no options other than to hurt the ones you love. Which is kind of like her breaking the fourth wall in a way.
Too, when she said it, yeah. I had something else about that line to think about, or to say, but I've forgotten it now.
Damn.
Because I remember thinking about that a lot when I first watched it. I had it highlighted because I'm like, I have a note here about Eleanor, but it's that Eleanor talk with the spy, amazing. This place makes you do all things to the people that you loved. But I didn't write anything else to the note because I thought that line would jog what I wanted to say. But I have not. It has not been jogged. Speaking about Eleanor, because you've sort of been talking about how you've been watching these blind wave reactions as we've been going.
Yes.
And that one of your takeaways was like, oh, they don't like Max and they don't like Eleanor. I hate these guys. Did they continue that into season 4? I don't remember. And also, how did you feel about Eleanor in this season? Was she always a good guy? Was she somewhere in the middle? How do we feel when she died, etc.?
So I loved Eleanor. She basically made every right choice. Like in the beginning, she's like doing her part to like be with the women and children or whatever, just to put up face,
Yeah,
right, to make everyone more comfortable. Like I like that. She's great. And then she just wants to leave. Like it makes sense. I'd want to leave too, and she just wants to live a happy life. So I'm completely on her side. Then she dies, and I'm sad. And well, because after she reunites with her sister, right? It's like a sad
yeah,
situation. With that crazy man that just was like a superhero, basically, like
yeah.
unkillable. Was
Terminator over
crazy.
here.
Yeah.
I think
Um,
that kind of thematically fits into more the sexist stuff of like this one dude can seem so daunting when you're like a woman.
True. Yeah.
And they can amass as much power as they want. This sort of goes into the various season 2 Game of Thrones talk about power resides where people think it resides, and when that's stripped away, when Eleanor doesn't have all this institutional power and all of her like bodyguards or her soldiers are absent, left in the wild, like she can be so easily overpowered just by like one soldier dude. Even the both of them. They're not
Mm,
exactly Anne Bonny over here. Um, and it sort
yep.
of is a reminder that I guess has to be in the back of a woman's mind constantly. Um,
Yep.
and that's some scary shit, I guess. Uh,
Yep. Terrible. But
yeah, because I
yeah,
was obviously on Eleanor's side the whole time because
good job.
we've made it. Uh, I've made it clear my Eleanor and Max simpage over these few videos. Um, I feel like there's I feel like it applies more to the Max part, but there is a specific scene in the fort um, where after the city's been taken back, uh, well, I guess Eleanor doesn't deal too much with Berenger. It's more of a Max thing, so we'll probably talk about that
Mm,
later. But in the fort after Berenger has been killed and they all have to retreat to the fort, um, Eleanor and Max have a scene that I didn't remember at all. Um, and they kind of I can't remember specifically what they say in it at this moment. Can you? Do you know which scene I'm talking about?
I no, not at all.
Because they have a scene because later in the Anne scene in the snow one that we're not going to talk about being the greatest scene of all
Mm,
time right now. Um, she mentions that like I had after I'd like beaten Eleanor, we had like this conversation, and it's referencing this conversation where she's like, Eleanor was trying to tell me something then, but I wouldn't listen, and it's
yep.
basically what we've been talking about how like the ones we love are like the most important thing to her. And even because actually we're still talking about this theme because for Flint, like choosing the people that you love over what he has to choose it over is his war. And what the
Yep.
girls have to choose it over is like their ambition to sort of be respected, their sort of feminism is what they sort of have to undercut. Max finds a
Mm,
way to not undercut it, which is kind of why she's kind of the winner of the whole
yeah.
show at the end. Um, and even when uh, Eleanor's grandmother at the end is like, "Oh, we kind of do need the man still to be the face of this operation or to lead it." I was doing that
Mm,
quotation marks. She rejects that, right? Because we'll talk about it when we get to the Anne Snow scene of why she rejects it. But still, she finds a way after that to get her own way, um,
mm,
and win basically. Um, but yeah, so this guy's Eleanor sort of is defeated by this, whereas Max, uh, I guess Max is the compromise here of sort of the revolution, um, through sort of compromise, where she um gets to choose the people that she loves because Anne is still around, but she also gets to win. Uh, I guess Max. I guess this will be important if I ever do make that Max video. Max is sort of the apex or the compromise between the sort of what you want versus what is necessary revolution type thing. Um,
mm,
but what were we talking? Oh, this fort scene that I can't remember what they say in. They say something about that. It's another scene where the tone is very understated, just like the Blackbeard Jack scene, where they're sort of quietly talking to each other and they're both exhausted, it feels, and they've both been through a lot of exhausted conversations. Add that to the list of what makes this
mm.
season and the execution so good. I wish I could remember more specifically what was said in that because it was like a revolution to me. And no, we've been using that word too much. It was a revelation was actually the word I was looking for to
Mm,
me when I saw that scene because I had no memory of it and it sort of was very important thematically to tie all that stuff together. And I'm pretty sure it is the last Max and Eleanor scene.
right.
There is a cute thing where you come to the end of these long running shows and you sort of have to, and especially on your second time through, where you realize like this
Yeah.
is the last scene these people have together, and they sort of there is, and sometimes it's subtle and sometimes it's not. Sometimes there is like a nod to the fact that this is their last
Yeah.
scene that you could probably pick up on if you were being like a more obvious example in the most recent Hot House of the Dragon episode is like Rhaenyra says goodbye to Jace, but then she has a longer goodbye with Luke,
Yep.
obviously because Luke is about to get bitten up. So we play into that. This happens in Mad Men a lot, which is way longer and has a lot more characters.
Mm,
Like Don and Roger kissing. Uh, he kisses him on the cheek, Ari. You don't get excited,
all
but it's
right.
sort of like, and then he walks away and says, "You are okay," and then he walks out. No, I'm crying right now, Ari. It's so good, greatest television show of all time.
Yeah. Black Sails.
So Black Sails, Black Sails gives it a run for its money. But yeah, so that being the last Eleanor and Maxon is kind of like it's like the close. There's like amount of closure to it. That's the word that ties this whole fucking monologue. There's a
Mm,
closure to Rhaenyra saying goodbye to Luke and cuddling him. Uh,
yep.
I guess I just spoiled that Jace is coming back alive.
Yeah, and for the people who
Nonetheless.
haven't seen House of the Dragon,
Fuck you. You should have muted it when I
yes, I'll
brought
cut
it
it
up.
out.
Don't cut it out.
I'm
Just,
not. I'm not. Don't worry.
yeah. Um,
Yeah.
Eleanor and Max in the scene we can't remember we've talked about somehow for 5 minutes now.
Yes. All right.
I guess we have to reserve ourselves to move on from Eleanor unless you have something else. I'm
I've
sure
got
it'll pop back
absolutely
later.
nothing. Eleanor, she lived, she died, she became a good person. There we go.
She yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
I'm ready
Next
to move
up,
on.
Rogers, kind of related to Eleanor, so we can probably still talk about Eleanor. My first point about him is that I don't just hate him. Like I don't flat out hate him, even though he is
Yeah.
like portrayed as like a villain throughout this entire season, basically.
He does some awful things.
Yeah, probably the most awful things, I guess. But like there's
Definitely
this scene
visceral.
where I think it's Eleanor and I don't know her name, but the maid, who I still don't know the name for.
Yeah, the spy.
They're at the fort and they're like looking out to see these ships that are approaching, and they're like, oh, who's it gonna be? And then the governor like puts up his flags, and it's revealed
Oh
that it
yeah,
is
and they
Rogers.
cheer.
And they cheer, and I cheer as well. Like I'm on their side. I'm like, hell yeah, Rogers
Yeah.
is back. So it's like I don't hate him. Like I'm still rooting for like I don't know, everyone to get out of the situation all happy. But
Yeah. I think that's the point of his character, and I just thought of this now, but what a genius observation it is. God, I'm just so smart, Ari.
yeah.
He's just like Flint. He has like this darkness bubbling beneath, where it's like,
Mm,
and I was thinking about this because I was watching some of the scenes, obviously, a few hours ago in preparation for this. One of the scenes I did watch was from episode 1, is when he's reunited with Eleanor. And it feels very much like it feels like season 3 was Rogers before you know the darkness is coming, where
mm,
he's just talking to her and they're like compromised and they're nice to each other, and he's likable in the way Woods Rogers was likable previously.
yeah.
And even in like, because in the Blackbeard episode, which is kind of his, maybe his defining moment in this, or maybe in the entire show.
Yeah.
Um, the episode opens with a monologue at night between. Well, I guess it's not a monologue because they're talking back and forth. A dialogue scene with him and Berenger, where and I actually, funnily enough, watched the trailer for season 4.
Oh wow.
It was 2 minutes long, and one of the lines very much highlighted in the trailer is the Berenger line from this scene where he's like, "The hour does not call for good men. It calls for
Mm,
dark men," or whatever. And then we get the monologue of him. No, we get the shots of like the men as they're loading into the ship with Rogers, and they've all got like shit on their face, and they're all looking mean, and it's like, all the good men died on the maroon beach or left when the king called, and now it's just
mm,
like a bunch of crazy. There is like, to make them scarier, it is noted, especially at the beginning of the season, that all the men remaining are like all fanatics that are desperate
yep.
for vengeance and hate the pirates, and Berenger is the key representation of this.
Yep.
Who I assume you have a little bit for Berenger later, but
Very little.
even
Yeah.
he's very dislikable almost all the time, but it's his characterization is also very interesting and nuanced, and I like it a lot.
Mm.
Especially the scene where the way he gets like a note and then he reads it out loud in the square and then like he takes off his weapon and like demands if anybody wants to be a traitor to his face and he screams at everybody.
Yeah.
Um, and then he calls them all cowards. It's like he's genuine when I feel like it would be so easy to make a bad guy in this position. Like another reason for him being bad would be for him to be ingenuine, for him to just be
Mm.
like secretly a coward or something who's just desperately clinging to power in a chaotic situation or something. But instead, he is genuine and determined and everything. And they even give him sort of the sympathetic, not a bracelet. I know what the thing is called, where he has the photos of his family in it.
Oh, the
Um,
the pendant or whatever.
Pendant. That's the word. Um, but
What a
yeah,
good guy.
Berenger is an extension of this, sort of in a more villainous fashion. Also, he has a lot of scenes that make me uncomfortable with Max, where it's like, oh no, he could
Mm.
do some crazy shit and kill her right now.
Yeah, yelling in her
Uh,
face.
but even Rogers, towards the beginning, has some very negative scenes with Max, where Max is like, do I have to pay for all of this? As they're doing all the trials in her tavern, which means she can't make any money and she's going to go bankrupt if this
Mm.
continues for too long. And he's just sort of very mean and dismissive to her. Uh, and Eleanor sort of has to mediate between them, which is because Rogers plays that line where it is sort of like, uh, I don't know, it's probably more like 40-60, 40 good, 60 bad. It
Mm.
is poignant though that all the Eleanor scenes are good Rogers scenes. She brings out the best in Ari. They're in
Yes.
love. Um, yeah, and all the bad because after the Blackbeard thing, he is very scary for like the characters that you like to be around, and they're
Mm.
usually only around him when they're like captives, and it's like, oh no. Oh, he could start kneel hauling or whatever it's called, keeling. I forget what the fucking thing is called that he does to
Yeah.
Blackbeard. But and
Punishing.
especially when he has Maddie and on the scene we already mentioned where he's shooting them one by one and he's got the fucking stoic look on his face, and Maddie's like the third one, but Silver presents the cash or whatever to
Mm.
stop him. Even because we're kind of hating on Billy at this point. And even when Billy is like with him, and I think there's a specific scene where he goes up to Billy with the gun and points at his head. I don't know if we'll get to mention this, but Billy mentions Gates in that monologue where Rogers has to go to Barlow's house, and there's a secret like
Mm.
basement, and it's got all of Gates's stuff in it, and he's like, Gates saved all of his Avery stuff, and that's how they get their map to Skull Island. Uh,
Yep.
Gates still being mentioned, Ari.
Yep.
What a great
What a
man he
guy.
was. But yeah, Rogers has this air of scariness to him of like, oh no, he's a fucking loose cannon. He's mad. He could kill your favorite character if he's around him. And this obviously all convalesces, using that word for a second time this video, in the final battle where for a time, and Jack initiates this. It's just him and Jack fighting, and you're like, Jack could totally die here. Like I'm pretty
Mm.
sure Flint and everybody are gonna win, but Jack could die, and then Flint comes rushing over, and it becomes a 2v1. And when
Yep.
Flint rushes over, the relief. And I remember this the first time, more so than even this watch through, but the relief that like hits you when Flint rushes
Yeah.
over. It's like, oh,
It's like
Jack's
Flint's
gonna
not gonna
live,
lose.
and they're
Yeah.
gonna win. Yeah, it's just so good. Rogers is made scary, Lamau. I feel like I've
Yep.
been monologuing, Ari. Your turn to monologue about Woods Rogers.
Okay. Woods Rogers is made scary, but is also made sad because Eleanor dies. And it's
He's
his own doing. Um.
It's very now. I just said Ari's gonna monologue. It's very villainous though, because it is his fault that Eleanor is dead. So there's sort of like a frustration
Yeah.
in him of like, you fucking idiot, you did this. And I feel like I remember Aaron from Blind Wave saying that a bunch. But those are memories from a long time ago that
Mm.
could be completely false. But I remember, and it might be the normies too. I remember them pointing at the screen, you did it, you, and it's like, yeah, that's the point, guys. Come on.
Yeah.
Uh,
I think it's interesting
yeah.
that he shows restraint though. Like he doesn't like when the maid confronts him about oh, I guess they have that scene which is I think I've that in the miscellaneous notes where it just annoyed me, but he has this scene with the maid where he like confronts her about adding Jack as like part of the deal with the Spanish, and he's like, "Oh,
Oh
you
yeah,
the
that was kind of
Spanish didn't
confusing.
want." Yeah, that was I didn't like that at all. It didn't make much sense at all. But he essentially she like betrayed him from his perspective, but he like lets her go. Like he hasn't
Yeah.
completely gone crazy and he's gonna
Well,
kill
she's not
everyone
a
who wrongs
pirate.
him.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's
But
because
very
of him, because of
specifically,
her that everything's gone wrong, right? Like if they just sent over the
yeah,
money that they
kind of.
had, it would have all worked out. But But he
Yeah.
doesn't kill her. Like he's I don't know. He's not completely
Yeah,
insane.
he's very sad in that moment.
Yeah.
The she was the prime example of the thing I was just talking about, where you're sort of scared
Yeah.
for her
Yeah.
when she's around him. And he's very scary, and it's like he could do anything. There's another scene that I wanted to point out because I really did like the scene, though it's very like lost in the shuffle, I would say, in the season. There's like his probably not second in command because that's Berenger, but
Berenger.
in terms of nobility and like running, his sort of second in command, he's like the black haired dude.
Wait, the shaved head guy?
No, no, no,
Okay.
not a
Okay.
soldier. One of like the nobility who
Right.
help
Right. Right.
run
Right.
like that
Okay.
side. He has a scene with Rogers. This is after Eleanor's dead, and he's gone sort of into his woes, and he's clearly being self-destructive and stuff. There's a scene he has where he's sort of like very honest with him,
Mm.
and also in that scene you're scared for him too because
Yeah.
Rogers could snap because he's basically telling him that he's fucking up and that he needs to change and sort of get over it. But yeah, those sort of Rogers stuff. Fuck. Oh, an incredible Rogers scene with the spy lady. And now I've remembered because I was like, did she tell him on the boat that Eleanor was pregnant? She doesn't. It comes in a
No.
scene later where a servant comes in after it's like the Undertaker who's taking care. I don't know if
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
the specific term. Who's taking care of the
Eleanor's body.
mortician is the correct term. Undertaker is somebody that takes them to the grave, I
It's a
think.
wrestler,
Also
right?
a wrestler
Yeah.
now. So yeah, that's what everybody thinks of. Um, the name came before the wrestler. The wrestler was named after the thingy, right, Ari?
Right. Right.
I know
Yeah.
my wrestling history. Don't pretend to fucking lecture me,
All
son.
right. All right.
Oh, the greatest scene of all time. He's like comes in, he's like, I have to tell you something, and then it like takes a few minutes, not a few minutes, but a few lines of them going back and forth of like, leave, sir, and then he's like, no, and they have like a mini
Yeah.
fight,
I really
and she's like,
like. Yeah,
it's
I
so
like
good.
in that scene where they're like it's the maid and Roger's talking, and then he keeps hearing this knocking in the background, and it like really pisses him off.
What
He like
is it?
yells,
Yeah.
yeah, and I love it. It's just so well
It's
acted.
another one of those scary moments.
Yeah,
Sorry, he's gonna fucking snap. This fucking Wizard Rogers, he's out of control.
yeah,
But yeah, like you don't want to hear what he's about. Like, I love the desperation. I love the dramatic irony of not. It's the reaction thing that we talk about every time in every video we've ever done together, where I
yeah,
mention Vidal and DBZ. But it's just so good. I just want to playing with that dramatic. Like, it's so palpable to me. I love that shit.
yeah,
And her desperation in sort of protecting Eleanor's memory because it is made explicit. She says it out loud that she likes Eleanor now, and that scene kind of doesn't work if she doesn't all of a sudden really like Eleanor because like why would she care if? But they establish that her and Eleanor have become friends, and Eleanor promises to let her go home like right afterwards, but then she dies.
yep.
But in
She
the end,
does
we
get
do get
home. Yeah,
in the final episode, we get her reading to her kids, and it's like, oh, that's cute.
yeah,
She made it home. Woods Rogers, he's scary. He's mourning Eleanor. It's his fault. Where are we up to? I jumped in at some point when you were like one line into your
no, that's.
note.
I was just talking about how he's sad. I didn't even have a note on it. It's just the other thing I thought of about him. The one thing I do have a note on is a very specific thing, which is that when Spain arrives and they're like clearing out Nassau, he seems affected by it. Like he has this moment where we see, from his perspective, there's this woman who's like being outed from their house or something. And I assume
she's clearly about to get raped.
Yeah, I'm assuming she's about to be raped. And he like looks at her, and I was like, oh, I guess he is affected by what's happening here. And he's probably thinking about how like one day, like when he started and coming here, he wanted to save everyone here, right? Like he wanted to bring civilization, and now he's the one just doing this. It was a cool moment.
Yeah, I think there's because I think he has been told at that point that Eleanor isn't in the fort, so he's like, if they find Eleanor and don't realize who she is, or worse, don't care, then she's gonna get raped. And he's sort of having fears of that too. But it is part of what you were saying, yeah.
Good.
Also, that scene is almost exactly like a Game of Thrones scene. Now, this isn't even one I just rewatched because it's at the end of season 1, where it's when Dany meets Miri Mazdor, who is the witch who ends up killing potentially Drogo and her baby, who she burns with her dragons. Well, they're not dragons yet, whatever. You know, the girl. Where there's sort of rapes going on there, and Daenerys orders them stopped. And it's similar where they're like grabbing her arms and stuff. It just very much reminds me of that. But yeah.
All right.
fuck, I feel like I had a more important point, but I got lost in the tangent. Can you believe it?
I can believe it.
Um, oh, I don't know if you're going to talk about this, but
No.
he heads off to fucking Havana, which is really cool. Were you going to bring this up, or should we talk about it now?
No. I mean, you
When he
mean the
goes to
scene
Spain.
specifically when he goes and talks to
Yeah, well,
Juan
it's not
Antonio
Spain
Grandel
because
or whatever?
it's
Yeah,
it's,
yeah, not
it's
Spain.
Cuba,
Yeah,
which is
Spanish
controlled by
occupied.
Spain.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
Havana. I
great.
thought he literally went to Spain until I was like, oh yeah, Havana, because
Yeah,
I think
Blind
I
Wave
thought in my
also
head that
thought that.
Havana was. Yeah, I thought in my head that Havana was in Spain, but I should know because in Broadwalk Empire we got a Cuba and we got a Havana a bunch, and The Godfather Part Two is mostly set in Cuba,
Oh,
um, in Havana. Uh, Not mostly, half the movie maybe. I guess it's almost mostly. Shut up, Ari. Stop second guessing me.
yeah.
Um,
Sorry.
but yeah, I should have known. But all of that's really cool. Him going up presenting Teacher's Head, which is actually like a history thing. Teacher's Head, it ends up in
Mm.
Havana. And that's like a big historical thing. So there's a reference there, but it's also like a gift. And then he comes in because they're at war at this point, and they're sort of the closest. Like if the war spreads here, these like Nassau would be the British sort of what do you call it, outpost here, closest in these waters, and Havana would be because they're like right next to each other, the islands
Yep.
of Cuba and Nassau. So like these two idiots are going to be at war almost certainly in the near future, but there's an alliance being brokered here out of vengeance.
Yep.
And then kind of conveniently, they killed each other's brothers, or no?
Rogers killed someone's brother.
Yeah, but I thought now. Actually, I think I might be racist to EliteAri.
Oh no.
I think I might have assumed that no. I think maybe it is true. Maybe I'm not.
I know what you're saying.
Yeah, that the brother
Like there's a
of the
story that
current
Rogers tells,
Cuba
right?
dude is one of the people that he kneel hold or whatever it's called the last
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. I don't know if that's true. I don't remember.
Yeah,
but I know what
that
you're
might
saying.
be
There was
true,
a
it might
story
not
that
be.
Rogers was talking about how he's like, yeah, there was this Spanish ship and they fired off this
There's a
one
lot of
shot and
bad
they got my
blood.
brother. Yeah.
Yeah, personally, yeah. There's a lot of bad blood personally that could be here, but is being put aside because Rogers is so mad and Cuba is given the opportunity.
Yep.
Cuba really doesn't get anything out of it but looking strong by fucking up Nassau in revenge for the cash. But it's worth it to them. Plus, we get that fucking sick fight at the farm that has nothing to do with Woods Rogers, so we can't talk about it now. But between the Spanish soldiers and Silver and the pirates, that's fucking sick.
Yep.
We'll talk about that later, perhaps. Do we have more on Woods
I
Rogers?
think that's it. I guess the only other thing is his
Well, we got to
conclusion.
talk about his ending.
Yeah, the conclusion, which is that his reputation is ruined.
We haven't even talked about the Blackbeard scene really at all.
Yeah, don't worry, that'll come up under another section.
Probably under the Jack one, huh?
Yeah.
And I guess Rogers' ending is probably better to talk about because it's very intertwined with Jack. Jack gets the win, he gets to humiliate him, and it's very earned after everything poor Jack goes through in the early parts of the season to get his revenge and his victory come the later parts. But he is sort of defamed, and defamed. By the end, as he sort of his creditors take him into custody because he's got a bunch of debts because of his ex-wife Sarah. It's fucking him over. I remember the name because Sarah's haunt me, Ari, but that's a story for another day. But that's it. Which is cute. Rogers. I liked that at the beginning, where it was like my wife didn't take it as I thought, and Eleanor's like, fuck. Infidelity comes with a little. There's a third party that's very pissed off and liable to do some crazy shit. Yeah. Helping people cheat, Ari, is not going to end well for you. You think you're not gonna be involved? Yeah. The interesting part about that is that they sort of cover for that and cover for sort of not even cover but characterize it because like Rogers says like, I hadn't seen her in like 3 years before I set sail for Nassau or whatever. Which is interesting because he doesn't seem too attached to her in the first season, in season 3. And there's even a mention where it's like the same episode where him and Eleanor hook up the first time. He's talking to somebody else and he mentions that he is married and has a wife. So it sort of it makes it a little bit more morally gray that because you want him to hook up so bad, and then it's like, but that and then to now learn that they really hadn't been together in like 3 years, and it's not exactly a loving marriage. But for her to still be mad, it just colors in a lot of the details and makes it more interesting, more nuanced of a situation, which I appreciated. Yeah, I think we might be moving on from Woods Rogers over here.
To Jack,
Oh,
Anne,
hold
and
on.
Teach. Oh, no.
Hold on.
Go ahead.
Do you know the meme, how it actually ended in EliteAri? The Woods Rogers
maybe
story.
you said it before, but I don't remember if you did.
Woods Rogers comes back and takes Nassau and kills Jack Rackham in real life history.
No,
that's no good.
No, really?
Yeah.
Oh
yeah.
my goodness, that's amazing.
It's funny because I think I'm powerful enough to like put that out of my mind and just take the Black Sails happy ending as it is. But part of me is always thinks about it whenever I think about the ending, and I've just embroiled that poison onto you.
That's pretty wild.
He pays off his creditors or something, and he comes back, and Jack Rackham ends up getting executed, and Bonnie gets away or something.
Isn't that interesting? Yeah. Like to have a story where you tell half the story so that it ends the way you want, you know, like as like a creator of a show.
Historical fiction is crazy sometimes.
Yeah, but it's like it's fiction in that it ended early. Like it still happens in that universe, I would assume.
Yeah, I feel like they said that in the Blind Wave reaction. I feel like that's how I learned about that.
Already. Oh no, maybe I haven't seen their final episode reaction. Maybe they talked about it there.
I think it might have been in a follow-up they did, because I think they did a whole like 2-hour discussion after the fact, Q&A type thing. And then didn't they interview Silver? Or am I making that up?
They talked to him. Yeah. Wait, or was it just a recording? Maybe I don't remember. I know they definitely had a recording of him.
Maybe they sent Patreon questions to him that he answered.
Right.
And then they had a recording of that.
Oh, this was years ago.
It's been a while. Yeah, years for me too. Not as many years, but
Yep.
Nonetheless, that was just something
finally,
I wanted to say.
We gotta move on. We're an hour in.
Indeed.
So Jack, Anne, and Teach. I have very few points here because they don't last that long as like a dynamic. But
it's so cute.
Yeah, it's cute. Like they start off in a very like mutually respectable relationship. Like if you've got these three people with like black,
they're all widows of Charles Vane.
Yeah. I guess I would say more like Jack and Teach, and then you got Anne along for Jack. But
yeah, Anne's like it is sort of the brother sister father-in-law kind of. Mum died, and we're left with this prick, and it's like, oh, but they actually learn to get along. It's cute.
Yeah, I like their dynamic, and then Teacher's obviously getting angry or getting upset with Anne for not following his orders a lot. But it's cool. It's a nice.
It's so good when she's like, when Jack comes to her and is like, if you don't do it, he might like literally kill you for disobeying orders, and she's like, he can try, and then Jack's like, he can try, and he does it in a funny voice. He's like, oh no, this is not ending well. You're gonna fucking die.
Yeah.
Anne can take him, right? He's old. He loses to Rogers in the next scene. What a weakling. But
yep, that's it.
Yeah,
dynamic.
I guess I don't want to move on to talk about that, but yeah, keep going.
I'm just trying to think if there's anything else. I haven't written anything besides the death scene, but there are a few scenes, but they're like scattered throughout.
Well, we already talked about the Swan monologue, but that's sort of it's Jack's like because they have built this up even in last season of Jack sort of earning Teacher's respect and being like, I don't know if this is in this season or the last season where what's his fucking name, Teach wonders out loud like, well, if Charles liked you so much, there must be something worthy about you or whatever. And so them slowly actualizing that, or Jack proving his worth. And that all comes to a head in the I guess it is the last scene they share speaking to each other when they're riding over to attack Woods Rogers' boat, and he's sort of they have the moment where Teach acknowledges him and is sort of like, I think the question is asked like, have you ever commanded a ship of this size or a fleet of this size? It must be ship, because maybe this is a different scene that I'm confusing with this one. But at some point he has to like, he's like, no, I haven't, and then he asks him again, and then Jack says yes, and it's sort of like a point about manifesting, I guess, and about becoming who you need to be, yeah, and confidence, yeah. But that's cute. So on this Jack, Anne, and Teach section, you said you only have a note on the death.
Yeah, so I in the Jack section,
later stuff
I have
is
some
probably
stuff
covered in other stuff. Yeah.
But that's it. Teach has his death scene, and I think it's the one thing that stood out to me the most the first time I watched it. And again, watching it now, it was definitely it's just a highlight of the show. Like it stands out. It would be something I would tell other people about, to be like, wait out for this. This is something that really stands out in the show. And it's just everything about it is so good. Like just the slow pace of it, the build up, even the haunting nature of like the shots of like he's initially like sitting down, right? And then they put the bag on his head, and then they like drag him, and it's even just following that dragging initially until he's upside down.
Because you don't realize what's happening, and you don't really get it.
Yeah.
And then when he comes back up, you're like, oh, I get it. And then it happens again and again, and now you really get it, and you really get it.
Yeah.
And Roger's losing it and getting frightful.
Yeah.
And especially after the second one, when he goes to get Jack, and it's like, oh, we're doing this to everybody, not just the captain.
Yeah.
And again, because we come to this scene through the monologue with Berenger from the beginning of the episode. And it's like, because we hear him saying, I started with the captain, then I went to the gun captains, then the gun crews, and then I let one dude tell the tale or whatever. But he never actually says what he did, and you're like, oh shit, what's happening? And also his teacher's like staring at him the whole time before. As we're seeing this monologue, you sort of get a shot of Rogers, and he's all disheveled and stuff, and he looks even scarier. And Teach just staring at him, because I assume the implication is that Teach has heard the story and knows what's coming, but is completely unafraid. And obviously the point is, I only thought about that today. But yeah, and obviously, even when, because when they put the bag on Teach's head, the last thing he does is like viscerally smile at him, because he ain't given up, and Teach kind of wins in the end, which is kind of the whole point of the scene. But again, it is like,
go ahead.
It is second to the eclipse, I think, in visceral, like feeling gross about it, even in retrospect and thinking about it. Long after it happens for me. So
this definitely stuck with me. Yeah. I was trying to think. Yeah, I do like you mentioned it before. I just love seeing Rogers' like increasing frustration. Like he's yelling again, and he's yelling louder every time, and it's just so good, you know? And then like you've got in that final round where he's going around the third time, and all the music is playing, and it's like this really slow like shots where they're like panning around the ship to see everyone's reaction, and then even the crew, like all of Jack's crew and Teacher's crew, they're all like looking to see if he's still alive, and it's just so well done.
Yeah. Jack has such a good defeated face in this whole section. And I remember one shot specifically of him just looking and being like, this is gross.
Yep.
Yeah.
But that's it. That's the scene.
Yeah. I think the little bit afterwards where I think the last line Rogers had is like, put them beneath or whatever, when he gives up and decides that he's not going to do it to the rest of them, is also it's such a like tension lifting moment. Worthy of pointing.
I guess it is interesting that this scene is a complete loss for Rogers, right? He doesn't get anything from this.
Yeah.
He gains nothing. Oh, I guess all he gains is the death of Teach, but he'd already beaten him, so there's nothing at all. It's great.
And the shot execution is also very visceral too. Everything about the scene. But yeah, he sort of loses. But his character gains so much from doing it, of being like fearful, even though he loses. So it sort of doubles in that way of being like a great Teach finale kind of send off. And and the shot of him like being basically all red and black and gross, and then his eye pops up and looks at him. Incredible shot.
The magnum opus of the show.
I don't know about all that.
In terms of production and like, you know, it's really well done. But all right, Jack, move on to Jack, unless you have anything else about it.
Yeah, I think so.
So my first point about Jack here is that he really does care about like the people in his life, and I guess his way of life in general in pirates, because like he has two situations here. The first one is where the Spanish are invading, and he waits at the beach for any survivors to come. Like he waits way longer than he probably should, and risks himself getting taken by the Spanish, and is waiting to see if there's any survivors. And then again at the end where he's there to trying to kill Flint or to capture him at least, but he doesn't, and he takes them on, and he takes all the people that are still alive, and he fights with them, and it's just like he really does care about them, which is cool.
Yeah,
he's a good guy, you know.
It's a secret heart of gold thing where he is verbally committed to being bad, but every time he's a good boy. I think a lot of people say that Jack is their favorite character in Black Sails. I think this season is the most reason why. I think the trials and tribulations you go through with him and everything ingratiates him a whole lot. I don't even think I have him in my top 5 personally, but that's because I'm a super special snowflake. Actually, I want to check real quick. Ari, say something while I scroll up and see if he's in.
All right, I'll say a very obvious point, which is that Jack wants to be superior to Rogers. You know, that's another
he
Jack
does.
point.
It becomes a grunge.
Yes.
A grudge. And also he has his name thing. Oh, he's in 5th, Ari. Fuck
well
Jack
done.
Rackham,
Well
you
done.
fucking prick.
Well, he's not in my top 5.
I really have...
Right?
He's not?
Yeah, we'll get
Can you
there.
believe
We'll
it?
get to that.
We're gonna have very different top 5s, I believe. But
yes.
Yes, I'm back. I'm thinking about Jack Rackham.
Yes, Jack Rackham.
He's very good in this season. Can you believe that, EliteAri?
Yes.
You got more notes, I'm assuming.
I have one more note, basically. It's like a big thing about Jack, I think. Like a few sub notes and stuff I can read through.
Well, you didn't do your Jack recap. I guess we should say that quickly.
My Jack recap?
Like what happened with Jack in this season?
Oh, okay, yes. So, well, I mean, he starts off with
on the
with
fleet
Teach and stuff, yeah.
Yeah.
As part of the he would be one of the leaders of the council that is of the Maroons.
Yeah.
It's like him, Teach, Flint, Silver. Then he loses, and then he goes, you know, he's gonna save all the pirates from the Spanish invasion. Then he goes to not Boston, Philadelphia. Yeah.
Well, he gets captured by Woods Rogers. He goes through that whole ordeal.
He has the whole ordeal. He fights the big man.
Well, he doesn't fight him.
Well, okay, and handedly defeats that fool.
Yes.
That suffers because of it. But we'll talk about that in the end section, I'm sure.
Oh, okay.
Yes. But for me, I
didn't know there was an and section, but okay.
Well, there's a max and I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know if I honestly don't even know if we talk about it there, but we can
talk about it now. Then.
Yes. All right. Anything you want to say before I talk about Jack's legacy stuff? I guess.
I guess. Well, he does a lot of suffering. There's a lot of particular scenes I want to do talk about. But I think a lot of them are Max related at the end. My favorite Jack scene is Max related in like episode 8. Even we were talking about his secret heart of gold. He sees Max again on the beach as the Spanish are coming in, and he takes her on board, which is another example of that. When she's like, "I'm not gonna ask again," or whatever, or "Come on then," or something like that. I guess the fighting stuff, like he is basically, it's a great moral dilemma little situation. There's this big burly. This is also something you didn't remember, by the way. And I was, actually, you did remember. You were like, didn't remember it. Then I described it more, and then you're like, oh yeah, I do remember that.
Yeah, it stood out.
He's got a big fucking Hamlet. Hammett. What do you call those things? Hamlet.
I don't even know what you're talking about. A hammer.
Big hammer.
What are you talking about?
Thing that you use to beat up Donkey Kong. In Mario,
I have no idea. I think it's just a hammer. That's what you call it. A mallet?
Big fucking hammer. That's probably the word I was looking for.
All right.
Yeah, but a mallet is the word I was looking for. And he's fucking smacking people's fingers and shit. That's no good. This big burly prick.
I think that's another very visceral scene where you start off that fight with the biggest chance, right?
And it's all Jack has to watch all of this, and you're sort of sitting there with it. Because get it, you watch it too, Ari, as like the viewer.
Yes, very
meta text.
Yeah.
But yes, basically it's tasked with, if you don't say a name, we're gonna choose Anne, and you're gonna watch Anne get beaten to death. So he chooses like the strongest dudes, and they, even if they look like they're going to win, it's a rigged game, and there's other dudes around. Yep. At some point, somebody knocks over a glass thing, so there's glass on the ground. And at some point, Anne tells him, like, just say me, or just don't say anybody.
Yeah.
And then they'll choose her. And then Anne initially tries to fight. Obviously, Anne's a good fighter, so we're like, maybe she could win. Then initially she gets the shit kicked out of her, broken ribs. And then she makes her way over to the glass and grabs the glass and starts killing people. There's the incredible shot where she grabs the glass very tight around her hands, blood squirts out everywhere. I had glass in my hand, Ari. I was getting sympathy pains, just like I get whenever I see somebody stitching themselves up, like in The Last of Us Part 2, or that Rhaenyra scene. My goodness gracious. And she clenches on and stabs this dude in the leg. He goes down, stabs him in the throat, and then she gets the keys and everything. She saves the fucking day, and you're like, I love Anne. I've not loved her that much. I always say I don't love her as much as other people. And in that moment, you're like, I love Anne.
Yep. And she suffers the worst like injuries I've seen in a lot of anything ever. Maybe I don't know. It's crazy. Like she's coughing up blood, and it's crazy.
We see the long healing process, though she does look completely fine in the last episode. Probably only at the end of the last episode. But yes, that's like second to the Blackbeard scene, because even after you finish the Blackbeard scene, you don't get like a relief on a rewatch where you're like, oh, all the bad stuff's over now. It's just fun, happy Black Sail stuff, because the very next episode is this whole thing. Oh, also, it's interesting because Woodes Rogers leaves, and somehow it gets even scarier that he now has left. And now these losers are in charge of because he wants them to be taken to hang in Port Royal. But then they're like, well, only like 80 you got to hang, really. Yeah. So we're going to have fun watching you all get killed.
Yep.
And then we kill those bastards. And it's, we love revenge here. Fuck Finland Saga.
Yep, absolutely.
And Anne's our hero of the day.
Yeah.
And this is obviously a big Jack thing. Jack cradles her afterwards.
Yeah. Okay. I want to say, commenting on that, like when Jack is like holding her and she's like gargling like the blood and everything. I think that's the closest I've gotten to tearing up in this show. Like that got me the most emotional, I think. And it's because like...
Did you hear my spit take? That was funny. Did you hear it?
No, I didn't.
God damn it.
Yeah. But like for me, the reason that's so emotional is just the fact that up until this point, like Anne doesn't want any of this. Like she has not wanted to be in this situation for so long. Like she is always just about, when are we going to leave? Why are you following Teach? Like we should just get out of here. And that's all she's ever wanted. And this is like where it got her. And she's suffering because of like the motivations of other people, and she just can't do anything to get out of it. And it's just so sad. But yeah, in the end she gets away, which is, it's great. It's a great scene. Good stuff.
Did you hear it that time?
I heard it. I kind of heard it that time.
That was great. I had to do it twice. We'll talk about crying and black sails, and it ain't at this scene, I'll tell you that much.
All right.
So Anne gets to be around for that one too, I guess.
Brilliant. But Jack.
Yes, it is incredible. It's so good. And then you have your Jack something legacy talk.
Yes. So legacy is obviously a big part of Jack. That's like his whole thing in the first few seasons, wanted to build his legacy. Now I have a few points here. So the first is about the scene where he is confronted by the girl at Eleanor's grandpa's workplace, I guess, is what it would be. Where the girl is talking about, or telling him about, oh, did you know Charles Vane?
Oh, shit. This scene's fucking incredible.
Yeah, and he's basically...
Oh, this is another thing I said to you, but you didn't remember, you idiot.
Oh, I didn't even remember you bringing it up. No, I didn't remember this at all.
Yeah, she said Charles Vane was a cannibal, I remember, and you're like, what? That doesn't happen, Carl. You're a fucking idiot.
Well, it did, and it was great.
It does.
So that girl comes up, tells him this like twisted legacy of Vane, the savage animal, the cannibal, of course.
Yeah.
And it's great.
I heard he eats people.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so good because Jack goes on this like monologue and you're like, man, I love Charles Vane. And
like what a man.
Doesn't hear him at all and is like,
it's like, it's not as interesting.
How do you eat people? And she's such like a bob in her head, like a little dumb girl. Ugh.
Yep. Yeah, we love her, all right? She just likes the stories, like we all do. She's like us, wanted to hear the great stories. But what he takes from that scene is that like he is forced essentially to face the idea. Actually, let me see what I've said. He is forced to face the idea. I didn't
realize this, and I get it entirely.
Yeah, it all ties together. Really he has to face the idea that the truth of one's legacy is irrelevant. Don't do things for the sake of legacy because you have no control of your legacy in the end, basically. And that's something that echoes throughout the rest of his story, basically, where it ties in where he's the one who's giving that speech at the end about Flint's fate, basically. And to me, when I'm watching it, I'm thinking about Flint's fate. and a bunch of other stuff. But
Yeah,
it
because
never.
Flint has to confront this too. To be
Yeah.
resigned in their histories.
Yes, but it works. It is more so even about Jack's kind of outlook on life, because I guess he is the one saying it, where he's talking about how the truth of a story doesn't matter because people will believe what they want to believe, and the stories that survive,
maturity.
Exactly, it gains truth and maturity. So it's the stories that survive become the truth to the people who weren't there to witness the events, right? The maturity.
There's a meta text to this too, where it's literally way more people are going to know this Jack Rackham than the real Jack Rackham that existed in reality. Because when I think of Jack Rackham, even if I read a book about Jack Rackham, I'm gonna think it's like I can't see Corlys as some white fucking prick in this goddamn book. He's a black fella from now until the end of time in my head.
Yep.
Even though that's two fake thingies. This one's one real and one fake thingy.
Yes.
But it's real to me, damn it. That's a wrestling reference. Everybody in chat's laughing. And we love Jack Rackham here, and meta text too. I literally think at some point in the past, probably before the reread, I had thought about Jack's sort of his commitment to his legacy, and there was a piece of me that was like, I don't really understand how that resolves. But EliteAri just figured it out for us. Can you believe it?
Well, he has. There's this one more scene he talks about, which is when, like, him and Anne, basically, where he's like, you know what, I'm going to give up on my legacy for the sake of us. And he talks about how, what have I even written here? The world would know. Oh, so Anne basically is like, oh, you really want to do this? You know, the world's going to remember you for betraying your brothers. And he's like, Charles Vane is dead. I do it for us. That's how it started. That's how it's going to end.
Yeah. Because his whole thing at the beginning of the season, at the end of last season, was that they are going to do it all for Charles Vane.
Yep.
Charles Vane will be at the... fuck, the specific line is so cool. It's not for the memory of Charles Vane, but memories in there. It was also a line in the trailer, so it has to be cool.
Oh, wow. I want to watch these trailers. It's going to be great.
Justice for the death of Charles Vane, I think, is what he says.
Right. Yep.
Yes.
That
even comes up. Yeah, because he's confronted with Eleanor on the beach when he sees Flint at the end of an episode, in the monologue where it reveals the Spanish fleet are coming that we already talked about. But even then, at that point, he doesn't like jump at Eleanor with a knife or something. He just sort of converses. So that's sort of part of the point. But yes, moving on.
Okay, so next up, Max and Anne. So
my goodness, EliteAri,
maybe you lead this.
You idiot! The greatest thing I ever saw in my life. Actually, I think you should probably lead. Okay. Are we doing a little recap?
Actually, yeah, maybe let me lead this because I have my first point here is about how these two characters. It's not really a recap, but to me, these two characters are the moral centers of both sides of this conflict, I guess, where you've got both of these characters who are both done with everything and they just want to move on from it all, basically. Like, you've got Max on one side where she's done with all this, I guess, all the power being taken away from her, and she just wants to move on from this war. And then on the other side, you've got Anne, who is just wanting to leave and telling Jack all the time to get out of here and why does he keep doing this. And it's just really interesting how they're both done with it and don't want to continue the Flint's ambitions, I guess.
I guess Max. Oh, I guess if you're framing it as they're done with Flint's sort of idea, that's kind of correct. Because I was going to say Max kind of just wants stability in the realm they're in, and that's what she gets in the end. So she's not really sick of Nassau. But
no, she's sick of the violence that's happening. I guess, like, sick of all of this.
She's conflict. Sick of this fucking cat not being drowned, Ari. That's what she's sick of. This back and forth.
Yes.
Yes, I don't want to jump into all of that just yet.
All right. So, more on this then. I would say that they... What have I even... let me read from my amazing notes that I structured beforehand. I wrote, more directly, they both comment on not wanting to deal with regrets anymore. Which I guess that makes sense. Anne doesn't want to capture Eleanor because she doesn't want to run into Max, basically, and then deal with having to kill Max. And then at the same time, you have another scene where it's Max talking about how she didn't want to kill Silver because she didn't want to live with killing him. Which is interesting. They both just don't want to do anything like that.
I feel like I remember saying in both season 3 and 2 that it was insane that Max and Silver have more scenes together. I'd completely forgotten. Not only that, I had absolutely 1,000,000,000% forgotten that they have that scene at the end of episode 2 in season 4. where they confront each other. When I was mind blown when I was seeing this play out in front of my eyes. I was like, my God, I can't believe this happened. But I don't really have much to say about that besides it's just
Yep.
cute that they get another scene together. That's probably their last scene together too.
They have that scene talking about where Thomas is.
Oh yeah, they do have that.
I also thought that was their last scene. I even wrote a note. I was like, oh, is this their last scene? But no, it wasn't. Yeah. Anyway.
Oh shit, I just remembered that one. I think the point, I guess, if we want to talk, which we are talking directly about Max and Anne, they start off like Anne has a lot of resentment towards Max, a lot of her basically nearly getting Jack killed, which is sort of a misunderstanding. Max didn't intend that. By the time the message has reached, she had been betrayed by Rogers, because Rogers initially was like, yes, even like he had no reason to hate Jack Rackham, but then Spain apparently wanted Rackham too, so he needed him.
Yep.
But yeah, and so it wasn't Max's fault, goddammit. Stupid bitch Anne.
Yep.
But Anne, yeah, initially, I don't think it's because she would have to kill Max, but that she might kill Max if she was exposed
she
to
ran
her
into
again.
her.
Yeah. So, and they initially, when they are reunited and Max is left, it leaves Nassau and ends up on the ship, and then obviously they go to Philadelphia later. Max and Anne have that first scene where she comes in and sees Anne as she's all fucked up from the fight that just happened. And it's when we get the reveal of Anne turning over and we see how fucked up she is. What was I saying before I was choking? Oh, and she tells her to get the fuck out or something, and she's mad at her. So we slowly see the rekindling of this relationship, which is also something I'd forgotten nearly entirely. I didn't realize that the scene I already loved more than anything else in the universe was also even better because it was their first rekindling scene. I just thought they were in love the whole of the season, and this was just the cap off to it. So it emboldened that scene. With all the Max scenes in Philadelphia we are going to get to, I'm sure. It is the exact thing you hope for in life when you love scenes so much and you go back and watch them and they're even better than you remembered. Which I had in Black Sails, I've talked about this all the way back in season 1 with the Gates and Flint ending thing where I was like, oh, that's not as good as I remembered. And even with some of the monologues at the very end of this show, it was like, it's not as good as I built it up in my head to be. These were the opposite of that. But do you have things you want to talk about before we get to the Philadelphia stuff? Because Max does do a lot. You were talking about something that's brought up that I completely had forgotten. I tried to send things back over to you, but now I'm monologuing again. Early on, and this is something I hadn't remembered, was Max's like kindness is brought up a lot because she could entirely, and if she was to be selfish, like I sort of had imagined in my head Max to have been, she could have sold out Adele and Featherstone for betraying her and betraying everybody and given them to Berenger, which he's like screaming at her and basically almost threatening to arrest and kill her for, but she doesn't do it. She protects them, which is a very nice thing. And then with Eleanor, she leaves the safety of the fort when the Spanish are coming in to destroy everything after the one dude says that it would be suicide to go out and try and save her. She goes out on the horse and tries to save her. She doesn't come anywhere close to it, but that's how she ends up back with Jack on the ship. But there is like a lot of selfless Max moments in this season, particularly.
She's a good person.
Which is brought up later on as to be like to be happy that she wins in the end, and with the Anne stuff and things like that. Now, Ari, I'm actually giving it back to you.
Well, let me see what I've got. I have a few things that kind of intertwine with the Philadelphia stuff, so maybe it's a good time to talk about it. I'm honestly not even sure when this happens, but Max makes a very maybe we've already covered this already, but Max makes a point about how you can't fight civilization from the outside in. And to me, an interesting case of like how she does that by fighting from the inside out is the fact that she doesn't hire slaves. Like she makes that as a specific thing where there's like a whole conversation about like, oh, you don't hire slaves, why not? And she explains it to Eleanor's grandma, I think.
Which I have a whole thing about this.
Yeah, it's like an interesting subtle thing of like, if she does that and then she can influence others to do that, like that's a one way of like subtly tackling this slave thing, right? it's just interesting.
It's reformation versus revolution, like slowly,
Yeah,
incrementally improving society by not trying to tear it all down at once.
yeah.
And we even see this, and this is brought up when they take Nassau back. There's like chaos in the streets that Flint and Silver talk about. And Flint is sort of completely okay with this, whereas the people around him are not. He's like, oh, everything is born out of like madness and
Mm,
chaos initially. Um, but that's sort of like what has to happen from revolution. Like, I guess the only historical revolution I really know anything about is the French Revolution, and they did get rid of the monarchy, and then they killed each other in the streets and started executing everybody, and then the monarchy ended up back reinstated at the end through the will of the people, where they had gained autonomy and then gave it back up for some semblance of like normalcy.
mm,
And it's sort of like out of revolution doesn't really ever come like the model society. It usually just devolves into chaos, and then people lust for like what once was. And it's sort of only through slow reformations. Like besides Haiti, which I think we brought up previously, like there aren't really places where like the slaves revolted, killed everybody, and then started their own society, and it was like, and it lasted or it thrived.
mm.
Usually it was slowly. Like we even Eleanor's grandmother in one scene even brings up that like the family of the one dude that she wants to marry Max to are reformationists. I don't know if there's a way to say that word that doesn't
Mm,
sound R-worded like I just did. But yeah, so it's like, oh, they're clearly against slavery, so they would be okay with marrying their son to a former slave, like a half black girl. Um, and then them going off to do this Nassau thing. So it's clear that even now there are, and we saw this through Thomas, right, and all of his followers, where they were speaking about mercy and not just killing all the pirates.
yep.
And obviously he was gay, and slowly reforming society from the inside, which is what eventually freed the slaves, kind of. Obviously, the Civil War was fought, but by then, at least half of society was against it to fight
Yeah.
that war against the other half. And slowly things have gotten more progressive throughout all of history. But again, that comes with a big uh, fuck up, which is that the telling the people of the time that like in 200 years your problems will be solved just leaves them with suffering. So
Yeah.
if you tell like people who are being oppressed now who really want to fight their oppressors and things like that, just to be like, oh, just be patient so we can reform things slowly, that might end up being the moral position, but it's like puts them in a hell of a bind. We kind of talked about this at the beginning.
Mm.
Reformationists. How do we get to this? Max is
Yes. Max changing
something.
from the inside out.
Oh yes,
But
yes. And
one
this is a
thing,
scene with
there is one
yeah.
quote that we have to mention when we're talking about all this change, which is from Julius, in episode 7, where he says,
Yes.
"No one changes the world, not like this, not all at once. The world is too strong for that." Which is
Yeah.
yeah, which is exactly what we're talking about. So Julius, he's a king, you know. He knows
Julius
he knows
is,
what's gonna
yeah,
happen. Yeah.
he's such an important character. Now we'll probably talk about this in the Flint or Silver section, but it's him being like a revolted slave that doesn't want to continue the fight is like so important to the narrative to present a character like that.
Mm.
Because initially my thing would be like, oh yeah, obviously all the slaves just want to fight and free all the slaves. But in reality, if there's one slave revolt, he gets his whole family. He probably doesn't want to go and free all the other slaves. He probably
Yeah.
just wants to take his family and go to safety with the Maroons, and is like, well, the rest of the slaves aren't my problem. I'm not a revolutionary right now. I just want to be with the people that I love, which is sort of the thematic
Mm.
conclusion to all of the characters' arcs. And I feel like that was an assumption, and it's such like an important character, especially when he's like the most against it. There's not even like a selfish white character that's against it
Mm.
this much. I think it's very important, and I like Julius. I think he's cool.
Yep.
But we'll talk about that later. But yes.
Yes. So back to Max and Anne.
This scene on the ship is the first one I have a lot of
Okay.
notes
Yeah.
for, which
Go
is
ahead.
the scene that we talked about, I think. I sort of have a general point. Actually, finish your stuff, and then we'll jump back to the scene. I have a note, so I won't forget it.
So I've only got 2 more notes. One is about
go for it.
just Max and Anne reuniting, like after the injury on the ship. So maybe it's related to your note. The other note is about the just the big scene, like about nothing being important or whatever.
My scene on the ship is the Jack scene, not the Anne scene. So, and the Anne scene happens first. So we should talk about that one first. Then,
Does
if
it?
you want to
I'm
know.
even trying to remember. I'm talking
It
about
does.
like
I
when
watched
she's
this
injured,
episode.
where it's
Yeah, I'm
like
talking about after this. Yeah, it
okay,
is like
well,
directly
okay.
after
So
this.
what I basically all I've said is that yeah, when they reunite, Max won't apologize to Anne, and then Anne is angry about it, but she also points out how easy it would have been for Max to lie and say she's sorry.
Yeah.
Which
Actually, this scene happens afterwards, but keep
oh, it
going
does.
because I don't bring up this scene.
No,
I was
that's
thinking about
it.
the initial scene. Oh yeah.
I just think it's
Um,
really interesting how empathetic she's understanding.
yeah. I feel like there's a uh, that's sort of, I don't want to say trope, but it's like I've seen that before in a story where somebody not apologizing and being genuine and not apologizing wins somebody over. And
Yeah, Anne and Max.
that's what happens in the end thing. But yeah, there's something I can't place it.
Black Sail
But
season
anyway,
4. Yes,
I
go
guess
go ahead with
yeah.
your notes now. Yeah,
Here we go. I got it's like a whole page of notes here, and it's
Yep.
basically a bunch of quotes from a bunch of Max scenes. So I guess we talked about as much as we're going to talk about all the early Max scenes. They're all good.
Yep.
They're not this good though. She's getting yelled at by Berenger. What a prick. We love Max.
Yep.
Doesn't sell out our friends. There is actually a scene on the ship with Featherstone about this where Featherstone says like, oh, because Jack is mad at her and Anne is mad at her and like everybody on the ship. That's mentioned in the scene I'm going to talk about where Jack's like, a lot of people were like, let's just kill Max and throw her overboard. She fucking betrayed us. And because it's revealed, and we didn't even talk. Oh, I guess we'll talk about this scene way later in the Silver and Flint section. Where it's like Eleanor, it's like Max's fault that they lost the battle because she intercepted Billy's message to tell them to not come into the harbor because there were like ships there to trap him. So they're all very mad at Max. Why was I bringing up that they wanted to kill Max? Oh, but because everybody's against her at this point. But Featherstone comes up to her and says, like, I know that there is like good in you, and you didn't sell me and Adele out, and it's like a little nudge forward for Max. But initially, there's a scene, the first of the many incredible Max scenes, is a scene with Jack where they sort of actually talk for the first time after being reunited and scream at each other, and it's great. Oh, but I figured out why the Max monologues are all the greatest things of all time, and it is just the rules of 3 thing. I've noticed this now, and especially in writing out a lot of these monologues, it's always a rule of 3, but the key part is that the first one is good enough. Is that she'll end up saying 3 things, but it's just like icing on the cake to the point where you'll be in tears by the third one, if you're a smart boy. It'll be more evident as I go through the examples, but it's the rules of it's just my goodness gracious me, Ari. So the scene with Jack on the ship. Jack has just come out of the meeting, and he basically says we're gonna follow Flint and continue the war. We're going to the Maroon camp, and the point of this scene is, as Max says, no, we're going north to Eleanor's grandmother, who she had been told about this because Eleanor had introduced this initially to help. Because they wanted to use Eleanor's grandparents to get Woodes Rogers out of his debt. But now Max's idea is like they might want vengeance for Eleanor being killed by Woodes Rogers, who's fucking shit up, and it's obvious, and it's also an opportunity for them to get Nassau again and sort of clear their name. All the motivations make sense. Who gives a fuck about that? We're talking about acting and characters here. They have an argument. Jack initially Max is very pissy with Jack, and Jack is like starts screaming. He's like, I just like convinced them all to not kill you, and he says that we only lost because of your goddamn betrayal, and how he says it, he screams it. And when Max is initially going off on him, it has the biggest, even bigger than when Anne is nearly dying and Blackbeard is getting tortured in front of him. There's the biggest suffering Jack face where he just cannot believe that like the woman he's clearly just fought for to not be killed is like shit talking in front of his face like so relentlessly. And then him exploding afterwards. The greatest fucking scene of all time until we talk about the next 3 scenes. I didn't write down any of Jack's fucking lines here, but they're so good initially. But the rule of 3 then comes in because, and Eleanor repeats this. Repetition is also a very key thing in a lot of the season 3 and season 4 Black Sail monologues. Like, I think Flint says the fuck Benjamin Hornigold thing twice, right? He says at the beginning and ending of that speech, or this might just be a season 4 thing if I'm wrong about that. Do you remember, Ari?
Wait, why would it be season
When
4?
Oh no! I'm saying that in that scene in season 3, the
Yeah,
fuck
yeah, yeah,
Benjamin Hornigold speech. You know what I'm talking about? Does he say
yeah.
that at the beginning and then that at the end? Does
I
he
think
repeat
he's
it, or does
like
he just say it
fuck
once?
Benjamin Hornigold, fuck his pardons. I don't know, something like that. I
Yeah,
don't know.
that whole thing. Actually, I think he might only say it once, so it might just be a season 4 thing where the repetition comes into the monologues. Because in a lot of these Anne monologues, she says uh, basically a thing twice, but then she'll change the third one in the rules of three.
Mm.
This will make sense in a second.
Yes,
So
yes.
she opens by saying Eleanor is dead. Eleanor is dead. Anne is nearly dead, and the governor is sitting in Nassau in my fucking chair, victorious. And she says this, very good acting. But then
Mm.
she'll say this again at the end, but she'll change the last part. But before that, she says, one of the things Jack says that he says so great is like, I just argued for you not to be killed or whatever, but talk to me like that again and I'll revisit the issue or something. And the way he says
Mm.
issue, issue, and he says in the Jack fashion, it's the greatest thing you
Yes.
ever heard in your life. And then Anne's response is like, if you think the smartest thing to do is to kill me, then it is clear to me that none of you have the faintest idea how to defeat Woods Rogers. And the way she says it is so entitled, but like in the whole scene, she's been kind of entitled, and then you're won over completely to Jack's side when he reveals that he just fought for her and how mad he is because
Mm.
you're like sympathetic with Jack. But then it shifts again with this part because you're entirely on Max's thing because you believe it when she says that like, oh, she is actually the smartest one here to defeat Woods Rogers. Try saying that fucking name.
Mm.
But this also ties into something you were saying earlier because this is right. This is the same scene where she says like, civilization, like we're going to follow Flint into a war with civilization, and she's like, civilization has been winning that war for like 100,000 years or something,
Yeah.
and one of the insults she has to Jack earlier is like, it's beaten smarter, braver, stronger men than you
Yeah.
or something, and that's what sets Jack off. This is the greatest scene of all time, EliteAri.
Yep.
But then her saying this, and it's like, how is she going to defeat Woods Rogers? And it's like the first time where her anger at Rogers has been let out because it's kind of been subtle when she's like, oh, he's doing these fucking trials in my fucking, I'm going to say barn. What's in her bar? I think that's the fucking name. Her establishment.
Mm.
And it's fucking her over, and slowly, and then Berenger is fucking with her, and then everything is falling apart, and he brings fucking Spain. So it's all been a build-up of Rogers slowly fucking her over.
Mm.
And then after she says this, like, I'm the one that knows how to beat Rogers, and then Jack says something like, yeah, you are, or like, how would you do it, or whatever, and then she says, you're goddamn right I do, or something.
Yeah.
It's the greatest fucking thing I ever said. And then she repeats it. And she's like, Eleanor is dead, Anne is nearly dead, and I want him to pay for all of it dearly. And the
Mm.
way she says it, and then she gives the line about when Flint goes south, we go north, or whatever. It's the greatest fucking thing I've ever said.
Yes.
Part of this being so good is also something that I've been talking about the whole time with this Black Sails nonsense, is the saying what's unexpected thing. And the example I always run to is the Hornigold one from season 1 when he says, I'm listening to him or whatever. And it's like the
Yep.
unexpected thing. Like Max here saying that she is the one that's going to defeat Woods Rogers when the whole time it has been sort of a battle of forces of like Flint has to be the one to beat him with his army against Rogers' army. But Anne to come forward and to have this whole a whole different mindset and sort of a successful mindset in how to defeat him is a great little twist, and it sort of changes how the show is going to end. Because I think that episode is episode 7, and it ends with Flint returning, and it would because obviously they're going north and they're going south. Flint returns to the Maroon camp, and like he gets there, and he talks to the Queen, and she's like, and there's like a shit ton of people there, and she's like, they've come from as far as like the Carolinas or something, and there's like a bunch, they have like a whole army there now.
Yep.
But then you notice that it's like episode 7 of the last season, and you're like, we don't have enough time to fight a whole war, and it's like this like, oh, this is all going to fall apart. And it sort of is the shift, and that is sort of the first subtle shift of something that seems so great of like, oh my god, we could actually fight a war now. And it shifts to being like, oh, this is not how it's going to end, and you start doing sort of process of elimination. You're like, oh, I think Max is the one that's going to finish this shit out, and it's a clever like way to lean you in Max's direction. But that's all for that scene. Greatest scene of all time. Everybody should go back and rewatch it. You'll understand just how great it is.
Okay, wait a second.
Next one.
Wait a minute.
Ari, jump in.
We got to clarify something. what is what? I don't think from all of your talking you just did, I don't think I understood what you meant by the threes. What is this threes you're
Oh,
talking about?
three. So Eleanor is dead, one. Anne is nearly dead, two. Three, and the governor
Oh,
is sitting in Nassau with my
okay, I
fucking chair
understand.
victorious.
Okay,
Then the repetition comes in because she says it again at the end. Now, again, this will be more evident because I'm going to go through a bunch of. Actually, it's only the only other time this happens with the rule of threes is in the Max Eleanor snow scene at the end, but that's also
okay,
a rule of three. But this is a repetition because then she repeats it at the end. But the way she says it at the beginning is sort of like a Eleanor is dead, Max is nearly dead, and the governor, and then she fires up for the last bit for the
mm,
three, is sitting in my fucking chair, and she gets really mad.
yep,
But then later, the tone of how she says it the second time, Eleanor is dead, she's like desperate at the end, and it's sort of
yep,
like initially she's angry, and then um, she's like calmed down, and she's like scornful, like, and Woods Rogers is going to pay for it all dearly, and it's sort of
yep,
like you believe in that moment that she has the power to beat this fucking
yep.
prick. That was the rule of three.
Okay, excellent.
Now keep that on the back burner because we're gonna get back to it. Oh, also this ties into scenes we were talking about last time in season three where I was noticing because I think I said something like Max always says one thing then two little things right afterwards because I was trying to mimic her voice and do the funny
Mm,
thing, but I didn't. I cowered out of it.
yep, yep.
That's how it works. That's how her acting works. I don't know if this is something cognizantly the actress like thought of or how she interpreted the writing or if this
Mm,
is maybe just something how she talks generally. But it's effective and I love it no matter what it is.
yep.
Um, Now we're getting into all the Eleanor's grandmother stuff. I've been building this up. I feel like the whole
I can't
series.
wait.
This is like my favorite stuff of all time. Now I do want you to jump in here and tell
Oh
you
no.
what you thought about all of this stuff. Were you freaking out that it was the greatest thing you ever saw? Were you like, this Kyle prick, he's overhyping this shit? When you first met her, did you understand it immediately that like, oh yeah, this is some shit that Kyle would love or something like that? I want to hear it all. I want to hear the reaction when she
Hmm.
showed up and everything like that.
Well, I mean, every time I saw her, it was all you were always in my mind, Kyle. All right.
Yeah,
The first time I saw her, I was like, "Oh, that's
I
the character
poisoned you.
Kyle was talking about." Every scene, I was paying attention. I'm like, "Okay, what would I think if Kyle was watching this scene?" Um, but
Well, hold on, just quickly. When Eleanor mentioned her in like episode one, were you like, oh shit, it's starting? Because
well,
I
yeah,
was
I
like,
guess, yeah. Um, but
you knew that I wasn't just fucking with you the whole time and making this up. Like this was actually gonna happen.
yeah, this character, I just didn't remember it all. Um, yeah, no. What could I
I get the
say?
notion that she didn't blow you away as much
I
as she
wouldn't
is.
say so. No, like to me, I would say she thoroughly like entertained, not entertained. Like in every scene I had her in, it was always a very good scene. Basically,
Yeah,
it reminds like I made a comparison. I don't know where I made it. Maybe it's in the miscellaneous notes where she reminded me a lot of Tywin Lannister from Game of Thrones,
yeah,
where every scene that like she commands every scene, they're always very interesting. And it always feels like it feels like you've got to be on the edge of your like intellect when you're talking to her or something. Um,
yeah. It's like a
which makes it
sparring match.
yeah, it's like a sparring match, and
There's
it
something
always
about
seems
earning her
like
respect too.
yeah, it seems like she's always busy, like Tywin was, where it's like whenever you're talking to her, you have to like fight to get her attention to actually like
Yeah.
respect you or something. Which I find really interesting as like a dynamic in scenes. So
There's
yeah.
yeah, there's a few things to it because initially I was like, oh, obviously he's gonna say Elena, the Queen of Thorns, but I
Oh,
think Tywin is
interesting. No,
the
I
better
think more
comparison.
Tywin. Yeah.
Yeah, because Elena is similar to Tywin, and I was like, oh, the girl thing. Well, now they're both old women, so
Mm,
obviously they're the same. There is something about like, there's something about stoic teachers or like people in power or people above you and sort of like earning their respect. And I feel like this is
mm,
usually a fatherly thing. If you have like a stoic father or something, and there's certain teachers that I would associate this to, where it's sort of like it's sort of approving yourself every time you talk to them. Now, Max, I think this is an audience thing because Max particularly doesn't do this, and I think that's how she earns her respect almost
mm.
immediately. But there's also two other things to it. It's that I'm a simp and that old people. So it's a matriarchal figure, which I don't know. I like mean, demanding women. And all
Mm,
of my favorite characters, we've gone through this.
yep.
Alicent, Cunty Rhaenyra, Asuka even. All of these characters, if there's like a woman in charge, Eleanor and Max in this show obviously are two other examples of it. If there's a woman in charge uh, who is either mean or smart, and I feel like her name's Marion, but I'm just going to say Eleanor's grandmother every time. She's not
Yep.
really mean. Um,
Yeah.
But yeah, and she's always to the point and stuff. And the third part to it is that she's older,
Mm,
which invokes that sort of Tywin shit, some like wiseness to be respected, and not just because it's not just that Tywin's old, it's that Tywin is like he has continued to excel,
mm,
um, through deplorable means, perhaps through hypocritical means with Tywin, but through like the Guthrie family over here is owning a bunch of buildings and shit, and she's successful, and she has been her whole life, and she's in a mentorship role, which
mm.
we'll get into in one of these Max scenes specifically. But all of that compounding is why, like, yeah, this is some Kyle Entertainment bullshit right
Yeah.
here. Um, Quintessential is gonna have me what do you call it? Rolling on the edge of my seat, something like that.
Yeah.
Fuck, I feel like I'm trying to jump into the next scene, but I had one other thing to touch on about the general thing about her character, but I've forgotten it. Did
Mm.
you have anything else to say about
No,
her, or did you
no,
cover it?
that's it.
Um, it's
She
I
has a
feel like I've
chair.
forgotten it. So, uh, she has a chair.
She sits in the chair the first time we see her. She's like knitting.
Yes.
That's
We'll get into the womanly stuff later because she sort of has to sit outside even though she's actually running things. I
mm,
think it's also the secret of like, oh, she's actually running things that's also so fucking cool.
yeah.
I feel like whenever there's a secret reveal of like the person in the background is, I guess that kind of happens with Scott a little bit. It's more paid to, more hear about it than see it because in like that one Flint monologue before he says fire, where he's like,
Mm,
who would have known that the whole time this not city, this whatever Nassau was being held together by you, and he like puts him over in that regard. It's like sick.
yeah.
So the secret ruler in the background thing is another um a Kyleism that he likes. This fella, what
Yeah.
an idiot. But I don't actually have much on her initial scene with Jack. But yeah, so Jack goes in and the Eleanor's grandfather is immediately like, no, he is no son of mine, and then
Mm,
kicks him out. And Jack sort of has this look on his face of absolute defeat, and then he walks outside, and then her first line is so good when she's like, "She's dead, isn't she?" or something,
mm,
talking about Eleanor. And because initially you're like, oh, this is probably the grandmother. She's going to be like a sympathetic woman who's like,
yeah.
oh, I am sad about my dead son and my dead granddaughter, which she kind of is. But it develops into more of like, actually, I'm going to tell them what to do. Um, and then she's like, meet me outside. And then they go on their initial walk and it's all cute. And they have a thing about either my husband is the luckiest bloke in the world or I'm running his shit. And then Jack retorts, it's the repetition thing again, where he's
Mm,
like, either I'm the luckiest pirate in the world or I have some merit because I found my way to you or something.
yeah.
And it's a great little back and forth that they have. But fuck Jack. We hate Jack. He sucks. He's number 5, not number
Yeah.
2,
Yeah. It's like
potentially number 1.
number 50. Yeah.
Um, so yes, the next one, which is actually the one I think is probably the biggest scene that they have that I actually have the least amount of notes on because it's Jack is there. It's the meeting scene where initially they meet and her creditor or whatever, her
Mm,
accountant is there too. And Anne has like the ledger. Not Anne. I'm confusing Anne
yeah.
and Max when I say things a lot. Um, oh, and even in my notes I say conversation about Anne not having slaves when it's Max.
Oh my goodness.
Um, the Anyway, they're all there doing a meeting. And Jack does a lot of the talking initially, and Max is just standing there,
Jesus.
sitting there. Um, until later with the cat monologue and the slaves thing, where the creditor is like, you have money allocated for your wage laborers, but not your other laborers. And then initially, Max says like, "No, I don't have any." And then the creditor pretends is acting like she's stupid and she doesn't realize like what a slave means. And she's like, "I'm talking about your slave, sweetheart," or whatever.
Mm,
He's like, "This dumb woman." And then she reiterates to him again. Um, and then she has like a really good like excuse for not having slaves. And I think this is the first time that Eleanor's grandmother speaks to her and is like, "That isn't the only reason, though, is it?"
mm.
Um, and it's sort of I don't know, there's something palpable about the way she says it, and man, and I misspoke
Jeez.
saying Anne when I meant Max.
Yep.
God damn it! And Max responds, and she keeps her composure completely, and she's like, "No," and then she explains it. Um, and there seems to be a fascination from Eleanor's grandmother's perspective about how difficult Max's journey must have been to get here,
Mm.
because she even asked the question. And this is one of the lines I have written down, where she's like, "So how exactly does one rise from a slave plantation in the French West Indies to a library in Philadelphia trying to remake the world?"
Mm.
Such a cool remake the world ending. And Max's response to this is, "What difference does it make?" It's such a Max, because clearly, like, it's like a sparring match. Like, Eleanor's grandmother has overextended herself by being charitable by saying that she's interested in her story,
Mm.
but Max is defensively like sparring with her by saying, "What difference does it make?" Like, a lesser person in Max's position would be like, "Well, let me tell you the story," and be very excited to talk about themselves. But instead,
Yeah.
Max is like, "What difference does it make?"
Yeah.
Um, and then Eleanor's grandmother goes into the cat monologue, and Anne realizes that the solution is to drown the cat,
Max.
drown the damned cat.
Yep.
Um, and then Eleanor's grandmother asks the question back, "What will you do when the cat fights back?" Um, Now I'm not entirely. I'm got all the cat stuff down. I think Flint is the cat, right,
That's
Ari? And
also
that's
what
why
I
they
was
got to kill
thinking.
him.
Yeah. Like you want to
Um,
drown the thing that's causing all the problems, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
which
Flint is like, Flint is, this is something Rogers even says to Flint in the conversation they have last season, where it's like, you are incompatible with civilization fundamentally, because your fundamental motivation is to bring down civilization. So if we are to have anything here, Flint cannot be a part of it, and
mm,
which becomes their mission. Um, and I guess Max is Eleanor's grandmother in this situation, where she's not mentioned in the story, and that's sort of the point. Max will be in the shadows, not mentioned, but she's secretly the one that forced um, Flint out of it all.
mm,
Silver would eventually have it be a gentle outing, probably.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, and it's, I don't know. The cat monologue is like, it's another one of the
I
where they
really
take their
like it.
time. It's just like the swan part where they take their time.
Yep.
And the acting is so good, and it's another one where it's like a riddle from an old person, and you're trying to figure
Mm,
it out, and you can't figure it out, but Max figures it out, and you're like, yeah, they're sparring, and Max is impressing her, and it's like,
yep.
yes. Um,
Yep. I agree.
that's the third of 5 scenes. Next
Jesus.
one. And these aren't even all of them. These are just the ones I took the notes
Yep.
for. Um, Scene walking with Eleanor's grandmother on the dock. Remember this one, EliteAri?
Yeah, it's so cold.
Um, it is cold. It's the fucking north of America. Can you believe that shit?
Yep.
Um, Not for me. It's fucking burning in this fucking part of the world
Yeah.
right now, Ari. It's
I
actually
know.
not that hot today. Yeah, shut up, down. You Southerners don't know anything about heat.
I
That's
don't
like the
know.
Game of Thrones line,
Hey, we
but
had
the
all those
opposite.
bushfires at one point.
We got bushfires too, all right.
Remember the great Australian bushfires of 2020? My goodness.
Yes.
There, it was right, right outside, it was red. Everything.
Yeah,
Crazy.
I didn't have that much. It is. You're a liar. This is a northern more climate. It's way hotter up here
All right,
usually.
all right, all right.
Anyway, shut up, EliteAri, you
Yes, yes.
fucking
Sorry,
Sydney
I.
prick. Cockroach. That's what
Yes,
we call them down there.
very true.
They're walking on the dock. It's cold, and that's what spurred us into this tangent.
Yes.
Um, the coolest line of all time and I feel this fundamentally in terms of relatability. I haven't been talking a lot about relatability and why I like these scenes, but Eleanor's grandmother talking about her fantasy of one day. I wrote it down, so I'm not going to do it. But one day about Eleanor showing up to her so she could like counsel her.
Mm,
And I wrote the monologue out. Uh, I start off halfway through though, so it won't make sense, but you'll catch on. This is about what I was just
yes,
saying.
yes.
A woman who reminded me of myself when I was younger would arrive in Boston, and I would walk the Charles with her and teach her the things a woman could do in this world. It's the wrong woman and the wrong river, but perhaps to get even this close to a fantasy is something. Um,
Brilliant.
just the greatest line I ever heard in the fucking history of my life.
Yep.
Obviously they're in Philadelphia, not Boston, so it's not the Charles, which I assume is a river in Philadelphia, in Boston, not Philadelphia. Um, I feel like I have fantasies like that with people, especially reuniting with people like that. And it's
Mm,
a very relatable idea to me, and the idea of, because those fantasies never come true. They're just sort of something you think about as you go into bed. And you're like, oh, that makes me happy.
mm.
Doze off, and you'll never see it. But I don't know. There's something I'm saying palpable a lot, Ari. It's the word of the day,
What a word.
as well as convalescence or whatever I was saying before. Um, palpable means you can taste it. You can taste the feeling.
Mm.
So it's like the way she says it. I don't know. Just particularly to me, it was like, like yes, if one of those fantasies came true, even if it was the wrong person on the wrong river, it would be like, this is like, and
Mm.
because she doesn't emote very much, but she's like what she's admitting here is like not stoic, and she is
Yeah.
entirely stoic, and this is like a fantasy, like a girl's fantasy coming true, and it's like, it's so heartwarming. And that's all I had for that scene. But they talk about like there's another test where she's like, why are the pirates still there or something? And it's like, everybody profits from the pirates, so they're kept around so that she understands that Max understands business and is smart and stuff like that.
Mm.
Um, an important part of this is also that Max is never. They're both so stoic in all these scenes. Max is never like, "Oh my God, thank you so much. I love this. This is you're everything I want to be. Thank you for guiding me in this." They're both so hesitant and reserved and sort of stoic is the wrong word because stoic has kind of a negative connotation to it. They're so comfortable almost. They're so I don't think I'm gonna get the
Mm.
word, but there's something about their demeanors in both these scenes. Where it feels like they can cut through the bullshit and like they're two people that see each other. They're like cut from the same cloth, so they
Yeah.
kind of inherently understand each other. When even like Flint and Silver might be two people that kind of understand each other in that way, but they sort of obviously it palpitates. That's a different word. It bursts. Like they scream at each other. They get very emotional with each other, and obviously you need that. These are the two main characters coming into climax in the last two episodes.
Mm.
And these two characters, through their sort of non-importance, are afforded this right here. But it's so cool. It's the greatest thing I ever saw. The best scenes in this fucking goddamn television program, Ari. That's 3 out of 5. Moving on.
Beautiful.
Oh, and this sort of cuts right into that scene, but it's them inside. It's now nighttime, and they're looking down at like this party where her potential husband is. And another really cool moment. I feel like all of these moments are cool for validating Max, which is, I think, what I
Mm.
was just trying to say, where it's like, this is all the validation from this, like, figure you somehow immediately commands your respect, and for her to, like, sort of endorse and mentor Max is sort of an endorsement of Max, and obviously you also, hopefully, like Max a lot at this. So it's just like, it's like a lot of validation that makes you feel really good. Feeling really
Mm.
good. That's the point of all this media nonsense, right? It doesn't all have to be Blackbeard getting thrown under the ship.
True.
So, Eleanor's grandmother's confidence in Anne's and in Max's ability to win over this dude is also really cool. Actually, I think this ties into something that I forgot to talk about in an earlier scene when the big line is like, so I could walk the Charles with her and teach her the things a woman can do in this world. Sort of hits on the thematic thing of sort of ruling from the shadows because you're not allowed, the world will not accept, I think is a line she has in the scene I'm now moving on to, where she's like, the world will not allow, oh no, she says like, to Max, like, I would want you in charge of Nassau after Max has said like, this is the man you want in charge of Nassau, and she's like, no, I want you in charge, but the world
Mm.
will not allow it or something like that. So it's sort of like, she would instill it's sort of the learning tree. Like she succeeded in life. She has lived the thrill of creating this business from the shadows, and she might not get any credit in name, but the people actually in the know credit her, and
Mm.
sort of she gets through from the shadows, which is obviously what Max will go on to do
Yeah.
successfully at the end. So it's sort of female agency too, of like, and I was talking about this with Alicent and the Hot D discussions and things like that, where you can't rule from the front, but you can wield power as a woman. You're not resigned to having no power and doing nothing. Through sort of your womanly charms, you can also influence people, which is the implication in this scene of like, yeah, Max will have to go down and charm this gentleman. And I have quotes here. Oh, and this scene is the first time where it sort of becomes Eleanor's grandmother gets a little creepy is the wrong word, but she's like, I can make I can make the dreams you have built real.
Mm.
Um, and she sort of like is whispering in her ear a little bit, and she says the toll is small, which is basically you have to marry this dude. Because I think she understands that Max kind of gay, doesn't like blokes. But the toll is small, but it must be paid. Tell me you're ready to pay it, and you and I will walk downstairs, and I will introduce you to him. And as I imagine, you'll have no difficulty taking things from there. So again, it's like the endorsement at the end, plus sort of the dilemma that Max is sort of silently going through that will be verbalized in the Anne scene, in a second, of sort of she'll have to marry a dude basically, and not which is not what she wants, and sort of she has to compromise here, and this is a potential compromise. And I think that brings us to the scene of the hour, which I believe you had a note on, so I might let you talk for a little bit.
No, not at all. All I did
uh,
was point out the scene and say that it's very clearly just a message of love above all, and it's executed in an incredible manner. Probably the best execution of that theme that I've seen.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, let me tell you about the greatest scene that ever was or ever will be, EliteAri.
All right.
This fucking scene, I cried again.
Beautiful.
I was scared I wouldn't.
Yep.
When I was writing these notes, I nearly cried again.
Yep.
In
I'm
reading
glad.
it, I might cry on stream, even though we're not streaming for you right now.
Good.
And I'm not even being ironic.
Yep.
The point is, with this scene, I've always said that I really don't care about Max and Anne's relationship that much. And it was still like my favorite scene back then. Now I do care about their relationship. Now I do like Anne a lot more. The big journey with us has been me liking Charles Vane a lot more. I also like Max a lot more through this read through as well. No,
Yep.
did I say Max
You
that
said
time? I meant
Max.
Anne.
All right.
Well, I like Max more too, because I guess she might be number one. If we keep talking like this, I'm
Interesting.
going to forget about Flint. But Flint is number one on the tier list, right?
All right. We'll see.
Taking a drink, all right? Let me fucking. So there are others. There are Anne, because this is the Anne Max section, right?
Oh god, I don't even
Because there's a
remember. Yeah,
great
it
scene
is.
in
It is. It
between
is.
that we have to mention, which is the Adele Anne scene in the interim, where she talks about Charlotte. This is the greatest scene I ever saw, Ari. I had forgotten about this. Because Anne is trying to cut the bread, but her hands are all fucked up, and this is after the second time she's basically told Max to go fuck herself, because Max comes in and tries to like feed her,
Yep.
and she tells her to fuck off again, which is obviously going to be blown off in the scene I was about to talk about. But I have a note down here. I think it just says the Charlotte conversation. She brings up Charlotte, who is the artist girl who Anne killed.
Jeez.
Anne, Ari, it was Anne.
Yes.
Killed in season 2
You killed
along
my
with
friend.
Logan. Yes, and she says, you killed my friend, and I wanted you to know that. And obviously there's tension because she has a knife, and she goes to pick up the knife, and it's like, is she going to kill... She could probably kill Anne right now, since she's all fucked up. But instead she cuts the bread, and it's like a scene about forgiveness.
Yep.
And that Adele forgives. And it also is like a retcon recontextualization of giving more weight to the Charlotte scene and who Charlotte was and Adele's relationship there. Because Adele at the time was very anti-Anne, and was mad at Max and is like, we need to get rid of her. She fucking killed Charlotte and all that shit. I actually remember not liking that scene. The first time I watched the show, I remember thinking that Adele's acting was not good in the scene. In the Anne scene, but I thought it was very good this time, and I just wanted to make a special note about it because it was fucking sick.
Yep.
And I don't know, I love it's one of those things, and I've been thinking about this a lot, especially because I'm about to read Berserk again, and I feel like the thing that made me fall in love with Berserk, like my favorite thing ever, was the nuanced character writing and the little moments that weren't necessary but they put in anyway. And I feel like that scene is both of those things. The nuanced character writing of like, if you're gonna have a bad guy, throw something in there where it's like, oh, this is like a really interesting and unique and like weird thing for them to do. I'd point out like the Irvine. I don't know if Ari remembers who that is, but he's like the bushy tail. You remember him?
I think you brought that up last time, didn't you?
Yes, I would have, because this is my go-to example. And him and Sonia having a little relationship, and it's like half of one chapter in the middle of like a Griffith chapter, and it's just like, and she like falls asleep at like his campfire, and he's sort of creepy, but then he like puts his coat around her, and it's just like the cutest thing you've ever seen. It's like, maybe these apostles are all right. And it's adding a dynamic there of you trying to figure out if these apostles are evil. Zod seems all right. Now there's this Irvine fella. He's such a nice bloke. So it's like so unnecessary, and like Irvine isn't that big of a character, and maybe that would come back into play at the very end because he would turn on that bastard Griffith, as I predicted Sonya would too, if they ever found out how just evil he is. Um,
Hmm.
so it might have had a plot, but just taking it in that context of it's like not needed, but it's just an extra little detail of characterization that's not necessary, and it's just like a little moment. And it's almost like a little bit of, and later in that arc when she's like riding him during the battle and he like saves her, it's like a recall to that moment. So tying this into the Adele conversation, it's like this didn't need to be addressed. Like it
Yeah.
could have just been like a. It's like people make fun of Game of Thrones because Tyrion kills Davos's son in the Blackwater, and then Davos meets him later and is like joking around with him, and they never address it. Um, in the
Hmm.
books, it's even worse. He kills like three of Davos's sons when he does the Blackwater wildfire thing, and it's like man, it would have been cool if there was like one scene where Davos was like pissy with him or something, but it's clear like the writers probably forgot about that and were like,
Hmm.
nobody gives a fuck about Davos' son. This is like we put that scene in there of like we could have just pretended like Adele is around and is too scared to ever have that conversation, but for
Yeah.
them to have it, and I feel like it's a poignant thematic like forgiveness moment. Because of again, it's in the execution of the scene and how the tone and the atmosphere of the scene. It's great stuff. But I wanted to mention that in between these scenes. Now we'll get to the greatest scene that ever was.
Beautiful.
Um, and it starts with Anne sort of breaking the veneer. Veneer is one of my new favorite words, and I haven't used it once yet. But Anne breaks it, the veneer, early on because she notices that Max is outside and she says, fuck are you doing out here? It's a mess out here. Come inside. Which is her being nice to Max, even though she's supposed to be pissy with her. It sort of breaks down. It's like her showing her true feelings for a second. And then afterwards she's like, or don't, I don't care, or something like that. Um, and then Max starts talking to her, and she ends up sitting down next to her, and she starts saying, she's like, "Oh, Eleanor's grandmother told me this is everything good, and like we're gonna like the plan is a success." And then she says like, "Oh, I said no to it," and Anne is like, "Why the fuck did you do that?" And then Max explains that she would have to marry a dude, and it's again another veneer drop. It doesn't take much to drop Anne's fucking veneer because she is not very subtle, but she's like, "Marry someone" or something, and she clearly gets mad at it, like she obviously still cares. And it's a great little moment in it of itself. Um, and then it continues spiraling, and then Max even explains that like, oh, it would only be for appearances' sake. She says appearances only. I can hear the words in my head, Ari. Um,
Yep.
yeah, and so then Anne again is like, well, then why didn't you just do it? And then this is basically Max's big explanation of why she couldn't just do it. She starts by monologuing about Eleanor, which is like her previous love, which is going to get into her current love. It's all great. And she says, I remember when I first saw Eleanor, and the way she delivers this monologue is so great. Again, Eleanor's dead at this point, so this is more characterization for her even after the fact. And it references the scene in the fort where, like, oh, she was trying to tell me in that scene uh, something. And then there's also an implication that, like, because Woodes Rogers exists, Max and Eleanor could never rekindle romantically because obviously there's a man in the way, which is what she doesn't want to happen between her and Anne. So we're all tying things in here.
Hmm.
This is tying all of the Max romantic subplots into one. Um, this is I think this is a rule of three thing again, but it's not the big one. And it's I have the quote here of why uh, Max summarizing why she said no when she says, I said no to Marion Guthrie's plan, that's her name, despite having no alternative and at the risk of losing the entire endeavor because I refused to situate a man in a position that he might interfere one day with my ability to repair things with you.
Hmm.
This is where the eyes start swelling, Ari.
Yep.
And this is because this isn't even into the rule of three thing I'm going to get into, but this is already enough. This is already the greatest scene of all time. This is already the
Yeah.
greatest like confession, like to say that I threw everything away just to for the ability to one day repair things with you. Not even that
Hmm.
we're getting together right now, which is what happens anyway. They touch hands at the end. We know
Yep.
what that means, Ari. They're
Yep.
in love again. But it's such a winding sentence. I said no,
Yeah.
despite having no alternative, at the risk of losing the entire endeavor because I refused to situate it. It's such a mouthy fucking
Yeah.
thing, and it's like, oh, you sort of get lulled into the river of this sentence, only for it to come to the end where it's just like because I love you, and it's like such a winding. That's how romance works, Ari. You got to build this fucking
Right.
shit up
Right.
to get to the poignant part. You understand.
Yes, of
And
course, of
then
course.
comes the rule of three, this is already the greatest, and then immediately afterwards she says, "You are the bravest person I have ever known, the
Mm,
truest I have ever known, and I betrayed you, and it sickens me. I am so sorry for working so hard to protect the wrong things, for failing to see that there is nothing important that does not include you."
mm,
This is the greatest scene I've ever seen in my life, and that's the last line in the scene.
yep,
And then Anne is the one that puts her hand out first, and then Max puts her hand on it. The tracking shot from behind the fence as the
yeah.
snow is coming down. There's a tree. I will remember that's if
It's
you
a great,
noticed on my
yeah.
media consumption thing, that's the shot I put on there to say that I had finished my Black Sails rewatch. It's the greatest shot of all time. It's the rule of three things that you are the bravest person I've ever known.
Mm,
What a thing to say to a person, EliteAri. What a
yep,
thing,
yep.
especially in a romantic situation. Oh my goodness gracious. And then the truest person I have ever known, it's like understated, it's the second one, and then it comes back, and then she does it betrays you and I've sickened me, but there is nothing important that does not include you. Oh my goodness.
Yep.
She 1, 2, 3 knockout. The rule of three. Um, I don't know what else to say, Elite
It's
Ari,
just
the
a great
greatest scene of
monologue.
all time.
Yeah.
Um, Even
I
Ari likes this one.
No, it's so good. I
Um,
underlined it in my notes when I was writing them, which happens
yeah.
very rarely, every few episodes. But yeah, I agree. It's just fantastic. Um, yep.
Every show is just a romance show, and there's a bunch of other bullshit in the fucking way. Uh, and apparently Anne and Max are the main romance here.
Yep.
Get over it, kids. I feel like in one of the reactions, either the Normies or Blind Wave, they cut the whole scene, and I remember being very mad. um, Maybe that's not true. Maybe they just cut a bunch of it, but I don't know. I
I
gotta
don't know.
go
I
and
hate
watch
when
it
that
after this,
happens.
Ari.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like one of them cut the dinner scene with Viserys in episode 8 too, and I was like, are we watching the
Mm.
same television program here?
Yep.
No, it wasn't that. One of them cut the Aegon "Do you love me, you imbecile" back and forth. That was it. Because you can't really cut the dinner scene.
My
Never
goodness.
mind. There's too much House of the Dragon in our
Yes.
Black
Yeah.
Sail.
No
We
more
always bring up
spoilers.
Black Sails
Yeah.
in our hot tea
We do.
videos, so we had to repay the favor.
Yeah.
I don't want to move on, Ari. We haven't said it's good enough yet.
Kyle, it's so
It's the
good.
greatest
They're
thing.
they're sitting in the snow. You know, they're suffering through the snow because of this
Yes.
moment. You know, it's
A
another addition
blizzard
of it.
together.
Yeah.
Um, Oh, and I don't know if we'll ever bring this up because we've done the Jack stuff, but when Jack comes back, and it's like, oh, he survived. I think this is in the last episode, and I guess we should talk about the last Eleanor Guthrie scene, Eleanor's
Eleanor.
grandmother scene,
Oh, okay.
because I don't have any notes on it, and I actually didn't get to rewatch it because I rewatched all of these before in the hours leading up to us talking here, and I didn't rewatch that one, so I don't remember too specifically.
Yeah.
Actually, I think that's more of a Jack scene because I'm starting to remember what he says.
Yeah.
But first, in Philadelphia, when Jack comes back in episode 10 and he sees Anne, and they do they kiss in that one? Because sometimes they kiss when they really miss each other, even though they're not romantic anymore.
Oh God, I don't remember.
I think they run up and because Anne is like on the street in like her blanket, and she's clearly
Yeah.
waiting for him, and she's like shocked that he's still alive and like grateful. It's so cute. EliteAri. We love it here.
Yep.
That being said, can you remember what the fuck they talk about in this last episode scene? Jack has basically the monologue that culminates in like if there ever is a day where Woodes Rogers on trial, I would like to help you ride it or something.
I think that's
and that's also when he says like if it's true or it's not true. It becomes truth and maturity or whatever. Because they have to explain why Flint isn't dead, but he's gone. There's a lot of meta stuff in that too. I probably should have fucking watched that
he
scene
talks
right
about
yeah.
I don't know if he talks about how they came up with a story to force the more moderate people to press for a more moderate solution. I remember that. I thought that was an interesting line.
Yeah.
But I think it just permeates. It's like that. Basically, it spans multiple scenes. It's in the background as narration. I think it's more of a Jack thing.
Yeah. But it's all great. Eleanor's grandmother, the fourth best character. I'm spoiling all of the tier list. The fourth best.
Interesting.
How do I have Eleanor in front of her grandmother? Maybe she's third best. I don't know. I can't. I'm on a wave right now. I can't let it
too late.
cloud.
Yeah, you've taken a screenshot of the tier list.
Because trust me, right now Max is kicking the shit out of Flint. But
we haven't even talked. We got a lot to talk about. We should let's keep going.
Well, that was the big. This is basically all my notes, so it'll be smooth sailing from
Oh
here on
boy,
in.
we haven't
I
even
hope.
touched Silver and Flint. Um, but yeah, well, next up is Billy. Are you ready to talk about Billy? Very short section.
Oh, hold on.
All
Firstly,
right. Yeah.
no, wait. This is about Billy, so don't like hold on. We're not talking
Okay.
about Billy.
Okay.
Let's talk about in the air of bad British boobs and
Oh my goodness.
Silver's terrible beard. Can we please talk about Billy's terrible
Amazing.
fucking
Oh no,
beard?
I thought it looked so good.
Oh my goodness.
He shows up. He looks
Um,
different. He looks like he's lived a rugged life, you know, on NASA. I'm like, man, this guy. Look at him.
yeah, that's the effect. Ben Gunn has a dumb beard too. What a Billy simp he is.
Yeah, true.
Um, I just have that's one of my miscellaneous notes. Billy's dumb
Billy.
beard. Ben Gunn's dumb beard.
What a
Dumb
duo they
fucking
make.
bearded pricks.
Well,
Yeah.
Billy taking a leadership role this season. Crazy. He's been building up his
Boo, boo,
people.
Billy. Boo.
I mean, honestly, not that much happens with him. Like I guess he has the lead. He becomes a leader. He has his own people. And his other main thing is that he is completely fed up with Flint at this point. Like he's done.
Yeah.
Like he even like when they're having that standoff between him and like Marty and Flint, he like cuts off Flint mid sentence and just like starts the fight, which is great.
Stop
It's a great
punking him.
moment. Yeah. But I mean, I think he is kind of in the right where it's like he talks about
he
how
kind of is, which makes it worse.
yeah,
Fucking prick.
like Flint is doing all these things that are just like he has this great line where he says, "I'm done following you into a path only you can see toward a victory only you seem to be able to define." Talking about how the never-ending nature of Flint's war and how he's done with it, and understandably so, and he has suffered because of it.
Yeah.
Which
Billy's
is
just
really
a big dumb idiot. He
but
doesn't see it, but
he is a villain throughout the season as well, which is interesting.
yeah. It's something that's been built up since the very beginning of the show, right? It's the Billy and Flint have to come to a culmination standoff because they cuck us out of it in season 2 because he sides back with him again after he threw him off the ship. And obviously this all goes back to the season 1 monologue where Billy is sort of the stand-in for the dumb average man, while Flint is the man with great ambitions who can see that civilization is coming.
Yeah.
And Billy is sort of slowly caught up, but those ideals are still kind of in play.
Yep.
Yeah.
But in the end,
it is a good build up. Yeah.
He wins.
And they have the shoot off. Yeah.
Well, I guess he doesn't win.
I was thinking the blow off was like the season 2 thing where they both shoot at each other, but they have the whole fight in that's so cool where they're climbing up the mast in the 10th episode.
And he falls into the water. His eyes get all red. It's crazy.
Yeah. Because in Treasure Island, Billy Bones like lives on Treasure Island by himself.
See, that's what I
why.
assumed that was what was happening. I don't know anything about Treasure Island.
I only found that out after the fact, but yeah.
I was also confused about Flint. We'll talk. I guess I'll mention it now. We'll talk about Treasure Island, but Flint talks when he's talking to Silver in his speech. He's like, "One day you'll get over Marty or something, and you'll want more and more." And I'm like, "Oh, are they referring to like Treasure Island or something? Is that like what's happening?"
I think so.
Yeah,
Silver's the bad guy in Treasure Island, is all I know. But he's like a generic pirate bad guy. Treasure Island is like not worthy of being prequeled by Black Sails, from what I understand. It's like a dumb kid's book.
Yeah, awesome. That makes it even better. I love that.
Yeah.
What are we talking about?
Billy,
yes. What else have I got?
They beat him up and it's kind of sad. They betray him. The one dude stands with him, and then Ben Gunn like frees him.
Yeah, lets him go.
Cute.
And then he doesn't shoot Ben when he has the chance.
Yeah.
But
on the boat at the end.
Billy's big thing is the fact that he goes too far, and he thinks at this point that he's irredeemable. Like he's killed too many of his men. There's no turning back. He's got what he wants. Yeah. Like Flint is gone out of the picture. He probably doesn't know it at that point. But he has achieved what he wanted to achieve. Like I guess he did set up the eventual like he was the one who got Marty. Like he was the one who turned Silver against Flint. Like it ended up working, his plan. But he has suffered because of it, because he took it too far and started killing his men. Interesting. You know, nice little weird, ironic storyline for Billy throughout this show. But unless you have anything else for Billy,
I'm sure there's more to say.
Yeah.
It is cute because a lot of the context around Billy changes, but a lot of them do stay the same. Like his like sort of devotion and fatherly reverence for Gates, and sort of that coming back with him having the notes and stuff like that. Him sort of like being the last stalwart of like Flint is fucking us over. Like it's so cute, and to the point that it's become redundant. Because I feel like at the beginning of the show, you're sort of like kind of on his side, and I'm thinking to like the normies when I was watching their reaction, they were like entirely on Billy's side, and they didn't like Flint at all at the beginning. So it's sort
Mm,
of like if that is the average viewer experience, it's sort of the irony of that being turned on you at the end, where it's like I feel like that happens in stories all the time, where the dude you side with at the beginning who you think, but through more context, he like becomes annoying and like, we're over this now, Billy. Come on, you got to get over it too.
mm,
Um, but the like when Billy has like Max, is kind of cool. And him and there's like a scene where Silver is like, where is Billy? When they're in like the town hall thingy.
yeah.
It's all cool. But yeah, Billy sort of like has his betrayal fall from grace moment where he's been the champion of the crew and the men, and then he ends up betraying them as well, um, in hopes of getting rid of Flint, which again he is kind of successful with. Uh,
Mm.
but yeah, Billy Bones, what a fella.
Billy Bones. Yep. What a guy. What an actor. I love that actor. Whenever I see him in things. Great. All right.
Okay,
Next up, Silver. Um, and then Flint. So I guess
yeah,
what could we even start with? Silver this season. He's a
the
big part
Maddie
of it.
thing is where is revealed at the beginning, which is kind of the
Oh, does that get
of
revealed
what.
this season? Man,
Yeah,
what
it's
a
in
what a
it's in episode one. It's like halfway through. It's after he's presumed dead, and Maddie like cries on the beach, and you're like, because you're like, oh, look, she cares for him, and then it's like, they're
right.
they're fucking, they love each other.
Yep.
It's more than that because it's like a subtle thing throughout seasons. Well, not really subtle, but it hasn't like they don't have a make out scene or a sex scene in season three.
Yep.
It is saved for here. So I love the build up in that first episode and the reveal halfway through that
Mm,
like because it works in context of like, oh, it's finally boiled over their emotion for each other, but actually you get that moment and that satisfaction, and then it retcons it and it makes it even more satisfying. So the
yep.
structure of that is really cool. But everything's to do with Maddie. Initially, we fear for Silver's death through Maddie's eyes, and then later we fear Maddie's death through Silver's eyes. Um, and that's sort of the defining thing. He loves her now, and it can turn him against the cause.
Yep.
But I guess before we talk about all that stuff, I guess Israel Hands comes first.
Yeah.
Right?
Well,
I
I
don't know.
guess, yeah.
You got
I
notes
don't know.
here?
I don't really know. Like, it's still a lot happens. Like, he's like the main character of this season, basically. Um,
Yeah.
like it starts off, he gets everyone thinks he's dead, and then he meets Israel, and he kind of turns him onto his side.
Yeah.
I don't really know. What could we say about like Israel
The
and
early
Silver?
Israel stuff is really interesting because the monologue and the pirate lore history about, oh, you were the one that killed those the kid and the old governor that's mentioned all the way back in season two.
Yeah.
And then you were thrown to the side when Charles Vane showed up and you were humiliated in front of the men or whatever.
Yep.
It's all cute. And I don't know, Israel Hands is just fucking sick throughout the whole thing, man. He's got like a
Yeah.
hammer thing he fights with.
I think I
He
agree.
kills Berenger. He has great monologues. The scene where Silver is like very very conflicted between choosing Billy or Flint, and he vents to Hands, and Hands slaps him and says,
Yep.
don't make me suffer the thinking."
Yep.
Great way to say it.
Be
Uh,
strong in your convictions.
yeah,
Yeah. I mean, yeah. He's cool. Israel's
yeah.
cool. Silver gives a nod, and Israel goes into action. I love it.
Oh, Israel Hands kind of becomes like the devil on Silver's shoulder a little bit. Like, kill Flint, he's gonna fuck you. Kill
Yeah.
Flint, look, he fucked you. And throughout, he continued if Silver refuses. Uh,
Yeah.
but yeah, that's not so much Silver. That's Israel Hands stuff.
Yes.
But what a cool bloke he is.
I think
Um,
I don't have this note specifically, but one thing that was really cool was like when Silver's trying to convince Israel to like not kill him, and
oh,
he's like exploiting his relationship with
there's no
Teach.
subtlety. Oh no, this is a different
No,
thing.
I'm
Okay,
no,
yeah.
and like initially he thinks that he like respects Teach or something, and he's like, "Oh, you want to get back with Teach? I can get you back with Teach or whatever." And then he like notices subtly that that Israel hates Teach, and then he changes completely. He's like, "Oh fuck, Teach! Like we don't need him or whatever."
Yeah.
And Israel's confused and it's like, "What?" I just really like that how that was executed. Whereas like Silver clearly picked up on something and changed his demeanor entirely.
Yeah, he's good at
it's really
reading
well
people
done.
and manipulating them.
Yeah.
The thing I was gonna bring up was because if you recall in season 2, he gave like an order or not an order to that one dude, and then he acted on it and killed the other conspirator when they had the thingy. And when he's talking to Hands, he like specifically in remembering that is like, now there is no subtlety or no double meaning to the things I'm saying right now. You don't kill him. It's so good. It's like, and the way, because he says it like, it might be a rule of 3 thing, because he says it in like 3 ways, and
Yeah.
it's so cool. It's like and just the looks they give each other back. It's a great moment. And it's bolstered by being a callback. But yeah, Israel Hands.
All right, Silver. I'm going to read out my first note here. Power is slowly shifting from Flint to Silver. That's basically the gist of this season. He's slowly going from, and even like the opening monologue of this season in the opening scene is like, I believe it was Flint, and he's talking about how there's 2 twins fighting to be the first to see the light of day.
It's like an old Bible verse, I think.
Yeah, and I think it's tying back to just Flint and Silver. These two, at least my understanding is that these 2 people vying for power, or even just having power thrust upon them, and like who will be the first to see the light in the end, and it ends up being Silver. But yeah, it just seems like whenever there's scenes now in this season between where we have a bunch of characters in the room, a lot of the time it'll be Silver is like the center of attention, and Flint will always be present, and you'll get a lot of like small looks that he's giving, but he is much less than he was in previous seasons. Like he won't give as many monologues. It's just an interesting change in dynamic, and it really feels like Flint is giving away his power voluntarily. Like he's slowly like mellowing out in his like his passion, and he's slowly giving away to give Silver the like light of day, like to give him some power, and also for Silver to be happy with Marty. Like there's a lot of scenes where he's like kind of letting Silver enjoy his relationship with Marty. I don't know, it's an interesting change in dynamic between these seasons.
I think initially it's because there's that saying about how when they're of one mind or whatever, they can do anything. So I think initially in all those situations, Flint thinks that they're like Silver is speaking for him and that he agrees with him. And then as they slowly like divulge as he like figures out, oh, he's lied and he's brought the cash on board and this Maddie stuff is like getting to him. It's sort of the return of Flint at the very end for the last like 3 episodes where the monologues start again and he's starting to scheme again. Because when it is Flint and Silver's kind of giving orders and Flint is just standing there is like something in me that's like, this is like wrong. This is like disgusting. Being cucked right now by this fucking Silver prick. Why are we listening to him? And it's like, man, I wish he would take charge. And it's a little bit with the Eleanor thing too, where it's Flint taking charge, but it is in a very passive manner. Like there's like a scene of him reading in the cell and Eleanor comes to talk to him or whatever. And it's just like him very passive about everything. And angry Flint comes back at the end. It is like a good sort of like starvation period. It's taking Flint away from you. Putting him in the background a tiny bit, and then at the end, giving him back in full force. Sick.
Well, my next Silver point is that it's basically the gist of the end of this season, which is that Flint is a dear friend of his. Like he actually is just he sees him as a very good friend. And I guess that's really it. Like I didn't remember how it ended up. Like if they would end up as friends or if it would be more Silver forcing his hand or something. But yeah, he just really likes him.
That ties into the Israel Hands thing we were saying. Where he's like, don't fucking you dare, and then the I'll sit with you for a minute, an hour, a day, and he keeps escalating. So that we might leave here together. We don't cry at that scene,
and then he kills him. No,
yes, I guess I was gonna say, is this where we talk about
we can talk about it in the ending section.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So another thing about Silver is that we never find out his backstory. You know, he doesn't want to tell Flint.
The
Because
meta shit, Ari. Is this where we talk about
really, no,
that?
I haven't got any meta stuff. What do
He's talking
you?
about how he doesn't have a backstory in real time, Ari. Nothing meta came to you in this moment?
No, actually, no. That's I'm
Oh,
just.
well,
I mean,
I'll
even
talk
now, I'm
about it
trying to
after you
think about it.
finish.
No, that's all I have. It's just we never find out his backstory.
Well, he's literally monologuing about how he doesn't have a backstory, and as soon as he says that, you're like, actually, we don't know his backstory. This fella's shady. I don't trust him, because this comes at episode 9, where he sort of fully takes on the role of being the villain, kinda. Obviously, this is sort of acclimated. Is that the right word? When he has I'll stay with you for a minute and an hour, where it's like, oh, he's still a good guy. If he was antagonistic for the last episode and a half or so. But yeah, he's like, oh, it doesn't matter what my backstory is. He has the fake backstory. What's that from, Ari? I feel like we've talked about his backstory in a previous episode, and we've mentioned that later he says it's fake. But there's a reference to an anime something where somebody has a fake backstory and it's a twist. And I'm just trying to think of it, but I can't remember.
I don't want
to
be spoiled on a twist. I don't know what you're talking about.
For whatever reason in my heart, I felt like it was also something we had both seen. So it might be an Attack on Titan thing or something.
Maybe.
Oh, Ryan has a fake backstory, you idiot. That's who I'm thinking of.
All right, genius.
Yeah. But anyway, it's sort of, that's the shift, because Ryan has fake backstory with I guess it's more Bertolt's fake backstory. And then twist is that he's a shady evil dude. So it gives you them vibes of if he's lied about that, he's not trustworthy, he's evil. Bertolt wasn't evil though, was he, EliteAri? He was just
no more spoilers. Attack on Titan.
Oh, get over it, kids. It's been out for 17 years.
Oh, mate, it's not over yet. Anyway,
maybe for illiterates.
Yeah.
But yes, the point is the meta stuff in that scene where they're basically talking about their characterization and how it doesn't matter or whatever, and all that matters is what I need to be in the moment for the story. It was all meta shit. I wish I'd written some of it down. That's some of the scenes. I spent too much time rewatching Max scenes, so I didn't get any notes from this.
Yeah.
And it's been quite a while. But I feel like there's more in there that I forgot, because it reminded me of the last time we talked about the meta stuff in the in the finale of season 3. But also the meta stuff there is he's training him how to beat him. So it's so when we fight in the climactic thing that we all know is going to happen, because we're talking metally right here, and Silver and Flint have to come into conflict because of Treasure Island and shit. Yeah, so you're teaching me how to beat you, Lamau. So in the dramatic thing, I can pull out it's like a Kill Bill or something, where at the end, she pulls out the trick. We're spoiling everything, already.
Unbelievable.
But yeah. But then that doesn't come to pass, so it's a little subversion. Meta. That's all I can recall to say about that.
Love it.
So
he has no backstory. Yeah. Okay, so now I don't have anything else for Silver.
Wait, hold on.
Except
the meta thing about the backstory I've just thought about is them pointing out that it's weird, them covering, if there was a criticism that oh, we don't really know that much about Silver, he's a weak character or something. It's like an addressing from the narrative about why Silver doesn't have a big backstory subplot in season 4 like Flint had in season 2 or something. That's just something that jumped into my mind. Continue, Ari. I promise I'll shut up for a minute at least.
Yeah, well, we're going to skip right to the end of Silver's entire story and the entire story of Black Sails. And we're going to talk about how... I don't know. Honestly, I don't know if we can talk about this at this point or if to wait till later. But Marty, he essentially, after everything is said and done, he goes to Marty, and Marty just feels betrayed. He planned everything that was going to happen so long ago. And she leaves him basically, or tells him to go away. And then he repeats the speech of hours, weeks, which we haven't talked about yet. He repeats that speech to her. And in the end, she does come back. We see her the final scene or whatever. She's there. It's just interesting. It's a strange. What's going on here? Really?
It's interesting, and
yeah.
Because of how we've structured it, we haven't talked about Flint yet. Because somehow it just hit me that we haven't talked about the massive Marty Flint parallel thing that happens throughout the entire season, about how the proponents of the war are Marty and Flint. Most of all, whereas Julius is sort of on the other side, and so is Silver come the end. And it's
Yeah.
sort of like this, and then like Flint's warning to Silver about like if you end the war, Marty will hate you too, and like don't you want her to love you or whatever, to try and convince him and stuff like that. And even in the earlier bits when it's Silver isn't around and it's Flint, Marty, and Billy, and sort of Flint and there's like an understanding. There's a bunch of Flint and Marty scenes where they're like kindred spirits. They both are kind of on the same path. Even her mother isn't even on the same like war path that Marty is.
Yeah.
I think like Flint refers to it as her war over and over again. Oh, and Marty has this, and we've kind of touched on this scene earlier, but just from the Eleanor perspective, the scene where she talks to Rogers as she's captive, and she's like, "I hear the screams of hundreds of thousands.
Like you hear
of
one
people.
voice, and I hear a chorus."
Yes. It reminds me of a scene from Brand New Day, Ari. Have you ever seen that movie?
I don't even know what that is. No.
It's like an Indigenous Australian movie. And there's like the main character ends up in jail. It's like a musical. It's like a kid's musical. And there's like this profound bit in the middle where like he like manifests the ancestors of like a bunch of Indigenous people, and there's like a bunch of like horrible genocide imagery, and the chorus is like, listen to the whims of my people or something. And it reminds me of it, and it's like, man, that's a powerful shit. And Marty, and because obviously it's got like the tapping of like the what do you call it, the knitting thingies throughout the whole thing of the monologue. Again, the atmosphere, the tone, the execution is so fucking good of that scene. Because basically, it's a great parallel to bring it full circle to what we were just talking about. Because Rogers is basically threatening her like, oh, I'll kill Silver, who he knows about their relationship at this point, and is like and she basically says that she doesn't care, that the war is more important to her than him, which is obviously the opposite side for Silver. And it's basically a commitment from like the narrative verbally that this is not what Maddie wants, but Silver is going to do it anyway, thinking that he knows what's in her best interest more than she does. And obviously this leads to conflict. Now, the thing of her showing up again, and this is teased in the Flint monologue at the end, where it's like, even if you can convince her to love you still, the war will be over or something, and he's like threatening him tacitly. So it is set up that like, oh, maybe she would forgive him in time, even though they do have the scene later where, as you said, he repeats the minute, hour, day thing. But at the end of that, she tells him to get out and is very mad. Yeah, but then they come back around, so it's like set up for that. It's interesting because they kind of view that as an ambiguous thing, because part of the thing is she doesn't believe that he let Flint live, which we'll talk about later. So I view that as another ambiguous thing of the ending of like, does she go back to Silver? Because when he's like standing on a sand dune and they show her like standing like on the other side or whatever, but she's not like smiling or anything. She's like, it has like a stern face. So it's like, maybe she yells at him and throws sand in his face and kicks him in the balls. And walks away and says, "And I don't ever want to see you again." That's kind of my interpretation of it. I don't know if I buy or if that I accept that she gets back with him. I guess it's kind of a happy ending, so maybe I want it to happen. But we'll talk about ending interpretations, I guess, later.
Yeah.
But yes, Marty is a big deal in this.
Absolutely.
In this thing. I have a note. I just noticed they make Marty and Flint want the same thing parallel way earlier and more effectively than I remembered. I remember it just sort of being talked about in the final episode. So I guess this is a criticism I had going into the rewatch, that this had come out of nowhere at the end or something. But it's there for the whole time. What a fucking idiot I was. But go ahead, Ari.
That's it. Silver, done. Silver comes to the same conclusion as Eleanor, Max, and all of that. Love above all. So I don't know, what else can we talk about for Silver?
I think that's it.
Yeah. All right, Flint, you ready?
We're ready.
I don't know what we can say about Flint. He's the main character.
We've said quite a bit. Yeah.
My first note, maybe we've covered it. I haven't pre-read it. Flint tells Marty that no one... Oh, I guess this was when he was convincing me, to fight along in this fight. He tells Marty that no one remembers before England, so no one can imagine a time after it.
Yeah.
The Empire survives because we believe its survival to be inevitable, but it isn't, and they know that. If we expose the illusion that England is not inevitable, then people will notice. I'm like, hell yeah, I believe in you, Flint.
Yeah, those are some of those early Flint and Marty scenes. They're great.
Yep. But yeah, he takes a step back this season, but he's always present. He's given looks. Makes himself a prisoner to Eleanor. We talked about. Yeah, I guess the only other real Flint thing I've got is about his speech at the end.
Well, hold on.
Yes,
Something
yes. Go
earlier,
ahead.
much earlier, that we haven't actually talked about. And maybe something else we should have talked about with the Silver thing was some of the battle scenes. So we haven't talked about the
Ooh.
Underhill estate thing really at all.
Yep.
Um, the Underhill dude had been in the show the whole time. He's got a daughter and a wife there.
Oh my god! I thought that was Berenger initially.
Oh yeah,
Yeah. No, I even started writing notes. I'm like, oh, Berenger has a wife and kid, and he's cowering, and they're gonna kill him. I don't remember this. But no, it was Underhill. But crazy.
yeah.
Yep.
So all that stuff is interesting because Flint is like compassionate in that scene. Also, we see a big attack. The Underhill dude gets shot, but the wife and kid are made very uh, uh likable, I guess. Now there is actually something that's sort of a miscellaneous note, but since we're talking about it, we may as well bring it up here. Berenger later says that the wife and kid are killed. After, because obviously they have a fight about it. They don't want to free the slaves or whatever because of retaliation, and Marty and Flint don't want to do it, but Billy does. And then they have the fight, and Flint and Marty's faction retreats, but Billy stays behind. So I guess Billy's group killed the wife and the kid.
I guess, yeah.
Which is mentioned later because Berenger gets a note that says like, oh, and even the wife, like his young daughter was killed or whatever. So Billy's a bad guy. But yeah, that's the Billy Flint confrontation at the end where they have the shoot off when tensions boil over because the militia is coming in. Militias are a crazy thing of the past, huh?
Yep.
Roaming around, killing people. Like citizens justice, that's no good. But yeah. And then the Spanish one is so good. All of the Spanish fighting stuff in that episode, because Flint has a bunch too, where he teams up with some fucking filthy redcoats for a little while to kill a bunch of Spanish dudes to store up in Barlow's house. That's cool. Like Flint is removed from it, so him slowly finding out that there are a bunch of Spanish troops and they turn the corner, and it's like that scene in Lord of the Rings where Frodo and everything, they see like the elephant men or whatever walking through, and they nearly fall down onto them. He's with like Smeagol and shit, my boy Gollum. It reminds me of that. Even though in that scene, I don't know how they didn't hear like the army marching, whereas in the Black Sail scene, it's not that much of an army, so I guess they can get away with it. Lord of the Rings is bad, apparently, Ari.
Yeah, I agree.
But yeah, all of that shit is fucking sick. But that fight, that might be my favorite fight scene in the entire show. The Silver and the gang versus the Spanish ones, where they realize they're coming up from like the crops behind them, and then Silver has to turn around, and he's like the one dude standing there, and he doesn't run away. He just holds the shot and shoots the one dude. And then they're forced to retreat into the barn. And then the slaves come in, and Julius comes in to fuck them all up. It's like a big fuck yeah moment. It's fucking sick. Everything.
And then
about
Flint is like, "We're taking every man. No one gets left behind on this day." Yeah, it's great.
Big speech. But yeah, all that early fighting stuff we haven't really talked about that much. So
it's all great. Everything is great. My favorite scene was the one I talked about with that. Like after they fight with Berenger, like their next episode, which is chaos. And it's like everyone is being chased and Eleanor's trying to get to the fort. That's my favorite action scene.
Yeah, there's a big tracking shot and Eleanor shoots the one dude. Yep. And they get in. Fucking sick. All right. Back to the notes.
Yeah, well, Flint, I don't know how we're going to talk about this, but like Flint and Silver talk basically at the end in like a campfire, even though there's no campfire. And it's just I just find it so engaging. Like I'm just listening because it's what's this dynamic here is that you've got Silver who has all the power in this situation, and you have Flint who basically has no power except his words, and he's just trying to
the words are
I guess that is his ultimate power, but he's a desperate man who knows that he can't do anything in this situation. It's so sad to listen to his speech about these dragons and how we can prove that to England that we're not these dragons. And he's just talking, and he even gets bitter at one point and he's like, so what have you decided about our futures? and
Yes.
it's
He
just
goes through
so
it in there. Yeah.
he's going through a
The
whole arc here of accepting that he can't do anything.
Yeah, because Silver cuts off the monologue, and like the shot doesn't cut back to Silver; it stays on Flint for a little while, and he does. So Flint has the patented like his cheek like stutters a
Yeah.
little bit when he's angry. It's like the little acting thing that he does.
Mm,
And it's like it like does it a few times, and he's just looking up, and he like can't believe his monologue has been cut off, and he realizes like in that moment that Silver isn't going to listen to it, and it's like,
mm,
oh, and then that's because then he's like hopeful in his monologue, discovery, and da-da-da.
yeah.
And then and then he gets bitter, and he's like, so what have you decided? And
Yep.
yeah, all of this will be for nothing. Uh,
Yeah. Defined by their
write down all the
histories.
quotes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I so like I like the defined by their histories, distorted to fit into their
yeah,
narrative until all that is left of us are the monsters, the stories they tell their children. And what else? There was
yeah.
let me see.
Spy Woman is reading those stories to the children at the end. It's cute.
Oh, that's a good point. Um, oh, you must know this. You're too smart not to know this.
Not to
Just
know
like
this.
just
Yeah,
that, like the way he says it. And he's just so desperate.
yeah.
It's like
The
they
way he
paint the
says
world
every
full of
fucking
shadows.
part of it is
Yeah,
so good.
it's one of my favorite monologues in this entire show.
Yeah.
Um,
I love it, but there was some like I've watched it so many times, and I
yeah,
don't know, in context, it didn't hit extra hard for whatever reason.
yeah, no, it
Um,
hit me hard.
the
Don't worry. Who didn't remember
yeah,
anything?
the the there be dragons thing is like an old pirate saying thing, and it's cute that
Mm,
it's like one of the things like how there's like no peg-legged or something character, or there's no character with a parrot. That's what that fucking bird is called in One Piece. So it's like, oh, he's probably saving
mm,
it for the final chapter, and there's going to be a bloke on the One Piece island where it's revealed what One Piece is, and he's going to have a fucking. It's like they saved the pirate trope for the very end. So when they finally bring out the there be dragons, which is
mm,
supposedly what pirates would say when like, oh, this area hasn't been mapped. So they're like, yeah, there's dragons over there.
right.
And only through discovery do you realize that there aren't
Yeah.
dragons. So it's like they exist in the shadows, but if you take the light to the shadows, there are no dragons there. That's what Flint's saying, Ari.
Yep.
Um,
And
yeah,
Silver's
but
taking
they
it
tell
away
their
from him.
children,
Yeah.
yes,
But it's probably the
it's so
right thing
good,
to do. Man. Yeah.
or probably not, or maybe, or
Hey,
probably
Flint's
not.
happier in the end because of it. Um,
But it's not about individual happiness, Ari. It's about doing what's right.
yeah, that's maybe,
Maybe.
maybe, maybe. Um, but yeah, I guess should we talk about the ending then? If we're talking about Flint, go
I
straight
guess
into
we're
the
moving
ending.
it on.
Yeah, the ending. So
The
okay,
just
yeah,
on this
yeah,
topic,
yeah.
the opening of the last episode being, and I feel like there are other last episodes that do this too, where it's just like of something you have no context for, and you're like, we're in the last episode.
Yeah,
What is going on here?
yeah.
And it's slightly tied in, because I believe it's Captain Morgan, which is another pirate thing. That's like the first bad guy in One Piece, so he's kind of a weak,
Oh,
pathetic nothing. But it's like Captain Morgan is like a pirate name, and so Captain Morgan is sent to this place and is asking questions, and you slowly realize what's happening because you tie it back into the one reference earlier where
yeah.
Silver's inquiring with Max and then somebody else, and he even asks Flint the question directly, like, "What would you do to have Thomas Hamilton back or whatever?" And
Mm,
Flint like dodges the question. That's not possible. Shut up. Um, yeah,
mm,
so I just love the tone, the execution, the atmosphere of that initial
yeah.
opening scene, and then tying it in at the end. Ah, unbelievable, EliteAri, unbelievable.
I agree. I really like it. Even the music that's being used there, I think,
Yes.
I vaguely remember liking that. Um, but yeah. So at the end, we have Silver and Flint talking. Silver talks about, I'll wait here for hours, for days, for months, etc., etc. Um,
The
and
birds fly, Ari. Can
yeah,
you
and then
fucking
then
believe
we
it?
get like this speech, I think, from someone else, and during that we cut to the birds flying, and then everyone like looking as though something just
No,
happened.
actually, I don't think that's how it happens. I think because we cut to like an not I guess an external shot where it's like a long shot of Flint standing there and Silver holding the gun, and then we cut to the rest of them like walking up a hill, and there's birds flying away from where presumably that just happened, like something spooked him, like the gun went off or
Yeah.
something.
Well,
And
it
then
must have been the
later, the
gun. Yeah.
monologue, yeah, later in the monologue, there's like, I think it's another shot of them like walking away or something. But yeah,
Right. Right.
yeah, just yeah,
Yeah. And then so I guess the issue here, the question is if he killed him in that situation or if he didn't. And then the thing
yeah,
that feeds it further is later on when Silver's talking to Marty. Um, it's only during his speech that we see Flint meeting Thomas. So it could be a fabrication of this is the story that Silver is telling people, right?
yeah. And
Um,
also, the
yeah.
Jack monologues in the middle and at the end of
Yes.
the episode is sort of like, it doesn't matter what's true. Who
Yes.
knows what could have happened? He's gone. It doesn't matter by which metric it is. The first scene kind of fucks it.
The opening scene of the episode.
Yeah. Now everything at like the farm paradise place is like the lighting is very like dreamy, like it could be fake.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I believe that he's at the farm, but that's probably just because that's what I want to believe.
Yeah.
It's almost to the point where I'm like mad at them because I remember the one time I clarified my stance on ambiguity, and it's because of this episode where I was like,
Mm.
I like ambiguity and like character motivation and like character thought and like how characters feel about each other. I don't really like ambiguous endings because I feel like it's such a small thing for the birds to fly, and like if you remove the shot of the birds flying, then there's no question really about it. But it feels like it's just like this little detail added in to try and get
Yeah.
some ambiguity in there. But that again is just like my confirmation bias of like I like the happy ending, so I want it to happen. Whereas you could go the exact opposite direction and say like, no, this is like what makes the ending or something.
I really like it.
Yeah.
I think it's just really interesting. And if it's really interesting, then I tend to like it.
Yeah, and it's kind of the thematic point, but even then, fuck these themes. Who gives a shit about that? I want the character stuff.
Yeah.
Um,
So I'm on the side of like I'm pretty sure I'm not obviously no it's intentionally ambiguous. There is no answer here. But
yeah,
my interpretation is that he does survive. Like he does, the happy ending does happen. But the thing I like kind of touched on before, which I thought was just really interesting, and I clearly did not remember at all from the first watch through, is the fact that when Silver does talk to Muddy, he does bring up that speech again. Like he repeats the hours, weeks, minutes, and to me
yeah.
that was so strange. I was like, if this is such an important
Like,
speech, then why is he bringing up it again and using it like a trick to manipulate her? You know, like it feels like to me in that situation,
yeah,
he's like he used it on Flint to trick him, and now he's using it on Muddy to trick her. So I don't know.
yeah.
Yeah.
There's a point in every man's life, EliteAri, where
Oh.
they realize that stand-up comics do the same exact routine every night. And when you hear it a second time, or like you hear a recording, and it's because it's never exactly the same, but it's almost the exact same thing. And because stand-up comedians make it like so personable that it makes it seem like they're coming up with it on the top of their head.
Mm.
When you hear the exact same joke, but like a few words are out of order, there's like a sinking fefeeling initially of like I've been lied to.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not special.
And
I
this
thought this was
happened.
for me.
And I remember because I was watching, as we all were, like shitty House of the Dragon cast interviews. And I feel like I heard Olivia Cook say, like, describe the same story twice. And it was the same feeling of like, I thought she was so charming when she said it the first time. But now she's like repeating it.
It's
So,
rehearsed. Yeah.
and it's completely immoral. Like, not immoral. It's completely like, it's all my fault. It's completely stupid for me to feel this way, but you feel that way. And that's the exact feeling that's invoked when he says it again to Marty. And it's like,
Yeah.
you're not as clever as you thought I am. You're like repeating yourself.
Yeah.
Like, everything you say should be unique and clever. And it's like, is this
Yep.
fucking prick lying right now? It's a great feeling to evoke. It's very cleverly done.
I love it.
Because it's so genuine and sweet the first time, and the second time it's like,
Yeah, it's like, oh, why?
Oh,
And it didn't work at all. Yeah, like it's interesting.
And it is like cringy. Like you feel like a secondhand cringe from Maddie's like undermining of it by like saying shut up or walking away, or she like cuts it off or something.
Mm.
That happens in stories a lot too. There's a trope where like somebody might say something romantic in like the first act of the movie to like their love interest, and then they might say it at the end after they've done some bad things or something, and they'll undermine it at the end, where it'll be like, I love you like the sweetest storm. And then they'll say it again at the end and it'll fall flat and like the girl will walk away or something. And it'll be like, oh, it's a similar feeling it hits on.
Yeah.
The repetition of it. Repetition working against us, unlike all of it working for us beforehand. It's all about execution, not about invocation of devices, Ari. That's what we've learned here today.
Yeah.
But we both have the same interpretation, so that's kind of boring. I
Yep.
wish you thought he was dead.
Yeah, I don't know. I just wanted to be so happy, good old Flint.
Yeah.
Like when I see Thomas and you like watch that scene through Flint's eyes, it's just so
yes,
that gets to me emotionally.
The slow turnaround, the reaction, Ari. The reactions are what we love.
It's like these two men, and the fact that Thomas looks so different as well.
He has a beard, but Flint, it's not dumb.
Like Flint looks so different to him as well, like his shaved head or whatever. Like, it's just they both look so different to each other, and they're both coming together. Man, so good.
But they recognize each other.
Yeah. They hug and kiss, and it's in the field. It's great. Man.
Yeah, in front of Israel hands and the men and stuff. So sort of like finality. And it also is sort of like because it kind of is like a prison thingy. So it's kind of like Flint is like getting his comeuppance for all the murders and shit he's done, that he is in sort of a prison situation now. So it works on that level too.
Yeah.
But did you have any other ending related notes or?
No, that's mainly it. The point I have one other point, which was about the speech Julius gave, but we already talked about that. Basically, that's how the world ends up changing now in our real world.
Yeah.
Just one bit at a time. Yeah.
Well. Is miscellaneous next?
Well, next up, what I have two notes on Berenger, just quickly. Probably should have done this earlier. One, he's fanatical, but he's understandable. And I kind of like him, basically. That's all I wanted to say about Berenger before we finish.
He's crazy. He's kind of scary, and he's a little bit likable.
Yes,
in like a despicable way.
Yes. But yeah, that's Berenger. Miscellaneous. Are you ready?
All right, on we go.
So. Oh boy. The random British soldier with a shaved head that appears out of nowhere and is basically in every scene.
He's so cute.
Yeah, but have I missed something? Like, was he seated last season or something?
No. Well, Berenger isn't in last season either. And now there's the big burly bloke, so I'll forgive him.
But it's so funny because he's just he doesn't say a word. We don't know his name. Like it's strange.
I feel like they say his name. He says some things.
I mean, he's very like every now and then.
He doesn't seem like one of the he hates the pirates so much that he's stuck around type blokes. He seems like a kind of a reasonable.
Yeah, he's
nice
just some guy.
Bloke,
yeah.
So,
yeah.
I got one.
Yeah.
Or one at least. De Groot's death and cowardly killing off characters easily at the end. This is something I've noticed in shows, and I feel like I bring up the Boardwalk Empire example all the time. I feel like De Groot's death is like it's a cowardly act. It's unnecessary.
Yeah. It doesn't achieve anything besides making us sad.
He's like an expendable. The shows seem to do this, and all shows do this. Sopranos does this. Mad Men doesn't, because characters don't really die in Mad Men because it's about fucking ads and not fighting. But Boardwalk does this a lot, where these shows seemingly in an attempt to sort of at the end, you sort of like obviously killing off characters. The coolness of killing off characters is supposed to be, or like there's a word here that would tie this all together, but it just won't come to me. The difficulty in why most stories don't kill off characters is because then you can't write about the characters anymore. And that shortens the cast. And if it's a character people like, well, then they're not going to be around anymore. Like killing off Ned Stark. Oh no more Ned Stark scenes. What if people are only watching for Ned Stark, which is kind of possible when you're early on in the show like that. So it's like a risk. So that's why the internet was like, oh my God, killing off Ned Stark at the beginning. My God, Game of Thrones is the greatest TV show of all time. The balls it takes to do this. Yeah. Same with the fake Aaron death and shit like that. So it's supposed to be like killing off characters is like, oh, you're like handicapping yourself by taking out this great character, and now you're going to like make up for it somehow. This is not the case when you're killing people off at the end. It's like a
Yeah.
cowardly act because you're not like there are no more scenes with the Groot. Even if he does live there, he might have been in an external shot while they're fighting at the end, and then that's it. Um,
Yep.
so it's sort of like you don't. It's like you're trying in this fake world I've created. You're trying to claim the valor of killing off a character and making it more difficult for yourself, but you're actually not because you're at the end of the series and it feels easy and it feels like you're sort of trying to tie up loose ends a little bit. Now this is more of a
Mm.
thing, and I think in Boardwalk Empire there's like two that are like, and they both happen right at the same time where you're like, is this like, it feels like they come out of nowhere almost. It's like, why did we do this? It's in like the second last episode. It's like, I don't
Mm.
know. There's like something frustrating about like, well, now every time I think of DeGroot, usually when I think of characters and they die, I usually think about their deaths, and I'm like, man, DeGroot just died at the end, man. If he'd survived, I would have been like rooting for DeGroot more throughout this rewatch.
Yeah.
But this happens a lot at the end, where it's like, oh, a bunch of characters, we can kill them all off at the end because we don't have to write any more show, so it's not going to make it more difficult for us.
Yeah.
The Groot is not that big of a deal. Like he's not that big of a character for this to be an exemplary example, but this is
Yeah.
really the only Black Sails example uh, that there is. I guess like Jody, the samurai dude, gets killed too.
Yeah, but he had
In
a
a cool
fight.
Flint fight scene that we didn't talk about.
Yep.
But all those fight scenes at the end are cool too.
They're great.
Um, as they're trailing Flint through the crazy island. We didn't talk about the island too much. The broken ship as they come in.
Yeah.
Um,
It looks
oh,
good.
another thing we didn't talk about was Blackbeard like sending the ship back, and it's got all the hung like British
Yeah.
soldiers on
Yeah.
it. That's a crazy thing. But yes, in Flint's monologue, they ate each other or whatever on the inside because they locked themselves in the ship or whatever. And
Yep.
Avery used to come here to do secret transactions that they didn't want the world to know about. Holy shit, Ari, we didn't talk about the old man and the Jack subplot with the old
Yeah.
man who's like,
Yeah.
I think I have a note about that, so I'll get back to that.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh, should I just scroll and find it now? Um,
Yeah.
where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Where
Old
is it? Where
man.
is it?
Heart attack man.
Uh, yes, I'm scrolling here.
The account.
Ari, you bring one up while I
All
find it.
right. I think I mentioned this before, but I thought Muddy died in that fight with the rapist Spanish guy. I was confident. I was like,
Oh
wow,
yeah.
I can't believe they killed her off. Black Sails is crazy. But no, she was alive.
Oh, this time you fell for it, is what you mean?
I think
Or
I fell
you
for it
remember?
both times. No,
Oh, okay.
yeah, I did fall for it this time. Yeah. Yep. Did you find the
What an
point?
idiot you are, EliteAri. I think I fell for it for the first time. I didn't, but I may as well read through the ones until I find it.
All right.
I think in episode 1 is the first time anybody has said abandoned ship in the show. That's a pirate
Huh.
thing, right? I guess that's just a Navy thing, but because Flint says it, and I'm like, huh, I don't think we've actually heard that yet. I don't know if they say that when the walrus is getting really fucked up by the Spanish war galley in the first season. I don't think so, because I don't think Flint is in a position to say it. They might. That would probably be the only example.
Mm.
Oh, I got another really good one, EliteAri. The preacher dude is in episode 1. Crazy. I didn't think he made it past season 2, but the creepy preacher dude is in like a crowd shot when they're all the civilians are hiding in the fort while the pirate attack is going on in the beginning of episode 1, and he's in there. It was
Unbelievable.
just a little detail that I thought was cute. All right, you do one. You do one now.
I am the worst person in the world at recognizing Miranda's house. So we see it a few times throughout this season, and I didn't pick up once that it was her house until I watched the Blind Wave
fireplace,
reaction
Ari.
videos.
Oh my goodness.
Like
We had
it's
this
burning.
discussion last time. Because you
Yeah, I
were
know.
yeah.
Well, her house is burning at the end, and
Unbelievable,
like Flint is looking at it, and I'm just like, why the hell
Yeah,
is he
he's
looking so
sad.
intently at this house? Like, what's going on? And I just couldn't figure it out. I was like, oh, is it symbolic because like Marty died in there or something? And, and then I watched the reaction, and they're talking about. It's like Jesus.
Yeah.
That's it.
Another note I have is, did they actually kill the Underhill family like Berenger claims? Which is I guess they
Yeah.
did.
Yeah, I guess.
Oh, Mr. Fraser, the merchant, is still around. He was another character I wasn't sure if stuck around, but he's been in there in all of the fucking seasons. He has a
Well,
scene with
that's a
Featherstone
survivor.
where Featherstone tries to get him to like turn on the governor or whatever. or help Max or something. There's a
Mm.
scene there. And then he's on the council. Oh, he's on the council with Featherstone at the end, maybe. I just have a note here. He's on the council with Featherstone, but that might be the council, Woods Rogers Council.
Mm.
Um, yeah. Uh,
Good on him. He's earned it.
yeah. I had a vague memory of the turn on Billy. I feel like I already talked about this. It's funny how pretty much every bit of context I'd forgotten. Flint handing himself over, the
Mm.
cash being retrieved, Woods leaving, having left so early, Eleanor being pregnant, and the fake out. These are all the things that I had forgotten about those,
Oh, you
everything
fool.
surrounding the turn on Billy. All right, your turn. All right, you do one.
All right. Uh, um. Oh yeah, at the beginning of episode 7, I just thought it was so cool, like seeing all of these different pirate and slave groups all coming together, like on the Maroon
Yeah,
Island, like all these new people. Where I'm like,
it
oh, they
is
all
really
have their
cool.
own individual stories, and they've been fighting for stuff, and it's just interesting.
The
Um.
tail is spread. It's fucking sick.
Yeah.
Uh,
Anything else? Any miscellaneous
on that,
notes? I
oh,
got
I
a
got a
bunch.
few more.
Yeah, go
Yeah.
ahead.
I just have one note here that says a war they are destined to lose, which I think we've talked about more in previous episodes, but sort of
Mm.
the doom surrounding everything of like historically we know how this turns out. England is not
Yeah.
toppled. So it's like pulling you in a different direction of like they can't win, but I believe that they can win. But of course Flint can win, but he actually can't win because they are destined to lose this
Yeah.
through history, unless we depart from history, which maybe they could do, but I don't really buy it. It's
Yeah.
just a cool little meta thingy that plays throughout the entire show.
Yep.
Um,
Love it.
all right, you do one. You do one.
Okay. Oh, this is my one complaint, which I touched on very early on. Um, Rogers accuses the spy, the maid spy, of adding the Jack part to the deal, so that she would
Yeah.
receive better terms for herself, basically. And I just wrote in capital letters underlined, this is very weak. Because like the whole situation was that she was like at this like outside like bar area or whatever. And the Spanish
Yeah,
like
because we
guy comes
we
and he
see
speaks
the
like really
scene.
cryptically. Yeah, and he's speaking cryptically about like, oh, if you want to please the people in Cuba or whatever, you should
Yeah, it does make no
add something
sense.
extra. And I was like, okay, I
But
guess this is just like a veiled threat talking in code of like the governor better add this thing. But I guess the way we're
yeah,
meant to interpret it is that it was she was doing something personal, but like it wasn't framed that way in
maybe.
the initial
I feel
scene.
like
So I
it.
was like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's weird.
The thing is, it's not really like retconned for anything. It's just like the tension in that one
Yeah.
scene. It's not like it's a big plot point that like
Yeah.
the like we have to ignore for the rest of the show to work. It's just kind of a weird aside. Maybe somebody in the comments will explain how it makes sense
Yeah,
to us.
yeah. That'd be great.
Um, Also, in the ending, we didn't actually talk about the ending at all, like the last like 10-minute scene.
What was it? I don't even remember. Wait.
Jack and the flag and Mark Reed showing up, but he's
Oh,
actually a
yes.
girl.
Yeah. It
Um,
was an interesting way to end.
well, it's like the whole point. Jack's. We see Anne's not Anne. Max's Nassau in action.
Mm.
Featherstone is now the governor. I
Yep.
wonder if they're married, Lamau. Um, I assume not, because that's kind of the point of that Anne monologue. But yeah, we'll get married to Featherstone. Adele can
Yeah.
live in the room, and I'll go hang out with Anne. Um, the Yeah, I don't know. It's just a cool thing. And then
Yeah,
Jack
it's
is
great.
like unsatisfied with the flag, even though that is like the famous pirate flag, which is another like, oh, it's a pirate thing that they save for the end, because that is
Yep.
the iconic crossbones, whatever it's called. Uh,
Yep.
but even then, it's another meta thing of like the show like covering for itself if the final season was like hated, because it's like Jack being unsatisfied. Like
Mm.
Lamau, they could pretend they were unsatisfied if everybody decided to hate the show.
Yeah.
Um, it's like the opposite of what the Game of Thrones ending did by building up that like, oh, it's this great story brought everybody together, but in the
Mm.
end, everybody hated the fucking story.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, clever from the back salespeople to cover their asses with the
Yep.
Jack thingy. Anne's sort of around, and Anne stares at Mark Reed because she can tell that it's a girl
Yeah.
pretending. Mark Reed, big famous pirate. I think her and Anne end up together or in love or something. Do I remember this from history, or am I making this up? But
It's
after like Jack
interesting.
dies to Woods Rogers, they run off together or something.
That's so funny.
Um,
All right.
I don't know if Jack and Anne like were lovers or whatever in real life. I don't know fucking pirate history, right?
Yeah.
All I know is people making comments on Black Sails videos talking about it.
Yep.
Um, my next note is about the Spain Jack Rackham thing, but anyway, we covered that.
Yep.
Um, but yeah,
All right.
your turn.
Next up. Um. Oh, we already talked about that. It was about the guy knocking on the door in the scene where the maid is telling Rogers about Eleanor's kid. The what is this? Oh, the cat story. We already talked about that. That was great. Oh, okay. This is a question. Who is like after the Spanish invade and like burn down Nassau, basically? Like who is left? Like, did they spare people? Like, did they not kill the like people in
Well,
the
I
houses or
assume some
something?
people hid successfully.
Like it really felt like they just went and destroyed everything.
Well,
Like,
there's all the people in the fort, and there's
yeah, I guess,
yeah.
yeah. I guess it is
And
just the
Nassau's
poor
obviously
people.
bigger than what's shown in external shots, just because of like they can't CGI that many houses in or
Yeah,
whatever.
I guess that's true.
But
That's
yeah,
very true. All right, I'll buy it. There's people alive. Um, all right. Yeah, I got 2 more points. So what else have you got?
I'd completely forgotten that about Gates and Avery's journals and Barlow's house cellar. That was cool.
Yep.
Charlotte conversation, we talked about that. Keep it going a little while longer. Oh, that's the note I think I had about the
Hmm.
Jack thing. There's this old dude that's so old that he used to sail with Avery. Though they pretend
Yeah.
that like you have to be that old to have sailed with Avery, but Gates sailed with Avery and he wasn't that old. Might not make sense, but anyway, that dude's fucking story is awesome. He dies on the deck of the ship right before they get there, and Featherstone can still get them there because he's like the greatest fucking
Yeah.
navigator, which is how we were
Yeah.
introduced to him. His monologue to Jack is the greatest thing I ever saw in my life. He's like, let keep the
Yeah.
account going a little while longer or whatever
Yeah. For all
for
of us who
all of
didn't.
those that came
Yeah.
before you and all those that came afterward, which is
Yeah.
kind of like the antithesis of the theme. Though Jack does keep it going, I guess. Uh,
Yeah. True. No, I really like
but
that. I like
yeah.
that guy. I thought he died in that during that speech, and then he didn't, and I was like, oh, I guess this guy
No, no.
survives and takes him there, and then he
Yeah,
dies
he dies
later.
later.
Crazy stuff.
But the introduction, because I watched the introduction as I was skimming through the episodes like 3 hours ago, or whatever, and it was like that is one old man. It was like
Yeah.
the first thing that said as he's shown like in the brothel with a girl on his lap. Uh, it's cute. Yeah, all of that shit is great.
Yep.
Um, yeah, you turn.
Okay.
Not it.
Oh, yeah. Okay, another point we've already talked about. Roger's hearing one voice while Marty hears a choir. Great, cool stuff.
Fucking sick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I got 1 more point.
Um.
So it's up to you.
Oh, you may as well do it. Go ahead.
All right. The triarchy. What a word here of Silver, Flint, and Jack is just really cool. Like in those final, like that. I think it's just the final episode where they're all on one ship, and it's like one ship with 3 captains,
Yeah.
and they're all very different people. And it's just so interesting having them all like work together to command a ship. I thought that was so cool.
There's Yeah,
Yeah.
there's the great scene where it's like Silver and Jack, and Silver's like, now why don't you tell me what the actual fuck you're doing here or
Yeah.
whatever?
Yeah.
And it's explained to him, and it's like they're seeing through each other, and it's like their excuses aren't very good, but they
Yeah.
got bigger things to worry about at the
And
moment.
like the fact that Jack is able to hold his own against Silver, where Silver's always this like clever guy who can always get through to people, but Jack is like, I mean, you have your secrets, I have my secrets. Like he's able to keep his own against Silver. It's great.
Yeah. The
Yeah.
yeah. The I just got to another note where it was the Silver and Flint cut between talks from episode 9, again a very meta. Why doesn't Silver have a backstory? And now I remember a specific very meta thing. It's because Silver says his backstory isn't relevant.
Mm.
So it's like, oh, his backstory isn't relevant to the narrative. That's why we never explored it, Ari.
Oh
So
yeah.
that's
Okay.
fleshing
Yeah.
out that point.
Yeah, I like that.
My next one is just Captain Morgan. I pointed that out. Flint Sash Silver speech. Flint needs it all to mean something. He is disappointed to resign himself to be the villain of the story. He throws. Oh, this is actually a big point.
All right.
Because Silver, they bring back like Flint's and Silver's like core character things in those monologues where Flint needs everything to mean something. And he doesn't want to be the like. There's two. We brought this up last time, I think, but there's two very specific scenes with Silver and Flint at the beginning of their relationship in season 2 that sort of highlight their entire character journeys. Where Silver realizes through saying something that Flint is like terrified to be the villain, and that he thinks like his like biggest reason for fighting is actually so he can show everybody that he isn't actually the villain, and that it terrifies him that they think he is.
Mm.
And that's obviously in that final monologue, he's like, "We will be the villains to their histories." When
Yeah.
he's like, and then the other one is that is the where the fuck else would you go where your life actually means something, which is from Flint to Silver. And in that final monologue, when he's getting bitter and pissy, he says, he says something about that. He's like, reflecting on this moment, you'll realize you threw it all away in this moment, everything that makes you matter or something. So it's like them throwing like, it's like when you tell each other your deepest darkest secrets,
Yeah.
and then you have the big blow up and you throw it back in each other's face.
That's
Bad
great.
lovers, these two. But yeah, so that's like bringing their entire characters full circle. Those like the defining two things about their characters. Should have brought that up earlier, huh?
No, perfect.
Um, Silver hits him with the "This is not what I wanted," which is from the Gates death scene, where in that
Oh, I didn't even pick that
it's
up.
Flint saying that to Gates when he kills him, but Silver's doing that when he's threatening to kill
Yeah.
the fuck is his name, Flint. But he doesn't actually go through with it. Maybe
Yeah.
that's another indication that he did go through with it. That parallel.
Yeah, maybe.
Um,
That's a great. I didn't pick up on that at all. That's great.
but yeah. That was something I remembering the when I was making these notes like 3 weeks ago, and I also remembered it today. But it's like I arrived at it independently. That's a Madman meme.
Good
But it was
job.
like, oh, I had the same thought and thought I was so clever, and then remembered that I had already had that thought.
Yep.
And I wasn't that clever. Oh, a big one I have in bold. They play the Gates song in the final scene. The
Yes.
scene,
Yeah.
yes,
I
you
know
know
what
what
you're
I'm
talking
talking about,
about.
all right?
It's like when
Yes.
when was it? When Jack was saying something and it was like in the background. It was
Yeah.
really quiet. I remember that.
Yes, it was. Oh, it was diegetic, which means that it's actually playing to the characters, not just for the
Right.
audience. But it's in the bar, like somebody's playing it in the
Yeah.
background,
Yeah.
which
So
is
go
cool.
watch it,
And
everyone
and
listening. It's in the
as a
final
comment
episode.
that said on our first video that it actually is like a famous pirate song, so it makes sense why it would be diegetic or whatever. But
Cool.
that was one of the comments we got in our first episode. It was cool.
Yep.
The last note I have is a big one that says themes.
Oh,
Identity. Where one thing begins and another ends. Eleanor and Nassau, Flint in this war, etc. I feel like they do bring that up where Eleanor doesn't know where she begins and like the island ends because they're so intertwined in Flint and his war. Who is Flint removed from the war? Who is Eleanor removed from Nassau? And that is interesting because Eleanor is thinking about leaving Nassau for her kid, which is interesting. Love is the death of Judy, haha, Game of Thrones meme, which is what we've been talking about the whole time. Silver gives up on the war for Maddie and to avoid perpetual suffering, as does all the characters. Reformation versus Revolution. Thomas sought Reformation, as did Rogers. Flint and Maddie sought Revolution, but Flint ends up a Reformationist in a Reformation place. By a man seeking like the whole point
That's
of
interesting.
the is Reformation. And that's all of our miscellaneous notes, or at least all of mine are, unless you're hiding one from me.
Oh, believe it or not, I am hiding one from you, Kyle.
I knew it. I can read his mind.
Yeah, no, but it's not a big one. So in the final fight with Jack, Rogers, and Flint, kind of does a House of the Dragon thing, which I thought was interesting, where it's intercutting between that fight with Jack, Rogers, and Flint with Marty and Silver, like Silver finding out if Marty's alive.
Oh yeah,
where it starts off and it's
Yeah.
like Jack is winning
Oh,
and
it is a great moment.
he's got Rogers on the ropes and he's about to kill him. So
And
we
while
think
that's
that
happening, we think
so we think
Maddie's
Marty's
dead.
alive. Oh no, we think in that
Oh, yeah,
situation,
yeah.
Marty's alive, and then we go to Silver who goes, and then we start thinking, oh, Marty's dead, and then we go back to the other scene, and then Jack starts losing. And then Flint steps in and he starts winning, and then we see that Marty's alive, and then Flint wins, and it's like back and forth,
Yeah, it's a great
paralleling each
build-up.
other. Yeah.
Because you do actually fall for it. You do think Maddie's dead. But also
Yeah.
a massive parallel thing that we didn't point out is that Silver finds a cook cowering beneath
Yes.
the boards like he was in episode 1.
Yep.
And he says, "Are you a fucking coward?"
How far he's
It's a
come.
big parallel.
Yeah.
Except he was actually the cook. Oh, maybe he was lying, and that's the point.
Yeah.
Unlike
Wow.
Silver, who was
Yeah. Anyway,
which is a great little parallel.
that's it. That's all the notes this time, Kyle.
That's all the miscellaneous notes.
So now all that's left is to share our tier lists.
I haven't seen yours yet. You
yeah,
fucking
and I
idiot.
haven't seen yours. I haven't opened it.
Oh yeah, you
Um,
didn't look at it.
so for everyone listening, where we each individually made our own character tier list. And I'll put it on the screen. I'll probably, if I remember, I'll put the link in the description if you want to make one or anything. Um,
Who's number one for you, EliteAri? That's how we'll do it.
number one, Flint, of
It's
course.
Flint. Yeah. Okay.
What are we talking about? Yeah.
All right. Who do you have above Max? Tell me now so I can beat the fuck out of them.
Oh Jesus! All right, should we each go over our ST characters? I guess. So you want me to go over my ST characters here?
How many do you have?
Quite a few.
I have either 15 or 13. I was counting
I have
twos
something
and then
like
I got
that.
mixed up.
All right.
Yeah.
I'll go over them and then you go over your list. So this is in order.
Wait, let's do our top 5 the way we were doing it. It'll
One,
be cute,
two,
but then
three,
after
four.
that we'll just say them.
All right.
So I have Max
Yep.
at number 2. Who do you got at number 2?
All right. So Flint is 1, and then Vane is number 2. I have loved Vane so much throughout this entire story. He's more complex than I thought initially. I love him a lot. Yep.
I got Eleanor at number 3.
Eleanor.
Of course.
Yes, of course. All right. I have got Anne at number 3. I really like Anne.
Still not Max.
Yep. No, not Max yet.
Anne above Jack and everybody.
Absolutely.
My number 4 is Eleanor's grandmother. Of course it is. She should be higher. Fuck this goddamn list.
Beautiful. I've got Max at my number 4.
I
she's
can't
great.
be hating on that, I suppose.
Yep.
I have Rackham at number 5.
And I've got Rogers at number 5. Interesting.
My goodness. I have a sneaky one at number 6 because I put Gates at number 6.
Oh my goodness. Okay. That's I can respect that. Like he was a pretty
He's such a likable fucking
and
prick.
he really stands
Great
out
actor.
even to this last season, right? All right, I got Silver at number 6.
Yeah. I got Anne at number 7.
I got Eleanor at number 7.
Silver at number 8.
Teach.
Yeah. What are we up to? 9. 9 was Vane for me. I put Silver in front of Vane. I did like Silver a lot more than I had remembered too. I probably would have put Silver at like the top of A tier and probably Vane too. But here they are at whatever numbers we were up
Beautiful. I have Jack in that position.
Yeah, and then I had Horn of Gold next. I got to love me some Horn of Gold.
This is great. I love this. I've got Abigail Ash. I really like her.
All right, I didn't have her in S tier, but I do have her high up in A tier. I had Miranda next.
Okay. Oh, we're getting pretty similar here. I've got Peter Ash next.
In S tier? My goodness.
Yeah, I really like him.
I think I put him in B tier. Where the fuck is he on mine?
Yeah. I just love his I love him in the flashbacks. I love that first scene we get of him where it's just how's he gonna react to everything, man.
Oh yeah, he's at the top of B tier for me.
Damn. All right.
I had Rogers next.
Okay, interesting. I have Miranda next, so similar to you.
Yeah, and then Teach was the last one I had in S tier.
Oh, okay. I got 2 more. I've got Gates, who you had higher up. And I've got Randall. I love Randall.
Yeah,
he's so great.
Randall at the bottom of A tier.
He is legitimately like a standout of the show. I loved every scene with him.
So neither of us had Billy in S
No,
tier.
not at all. Where's your Billy?
Yeah, Billy's at the top of A tier
Same,
for me. But,
same top of A tier.
Yeah. The rest, I'll just say all my A tier and then you go.
Yep.
I got Featherstone, then Scott, then Abigail, then Israel Hands, then Adele, then Spy Lady, then Maroon Queen, then Berenger, then Thomas, then Marty. She's kind of far down in A tier.
Yeah.
Then DeGroot, then Richard Guthrie, then Ben Gunn, then Randall to round out A tier.
Ben Gunn in A tier.
Remember, I love the Richard Guthrie, Eleanor hand on shoulder scene.
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah, I remember you loving that one.
Yeah. All right, give me your A tier.
All right, I got. Let me move this to my other monitor. Billy. Oh no, am I gonna even remember all these names? Okay, Billy, Hornigold, Berenger, Israel, Eleanor's grandma, DeGroot.
A tier.
Yes. Yeah, DeGroot, Alfred Hamilton, Featherstone, Julius, and I don't know her name, but the Mrs. Mapleton. That's it. The person in charge of the brothel.
Oh yeah, yep. I put her in B tier. Yep. We don't have to go through the rest because I certainly don't remember. I had Alfred Hamilton in B.
Who's your
Julius
lowest
is in
characters?
B. I put DeGroot at the bottom of C tier. What did you?
Wait,
who did you have at the bottom?
Dufresne or DeGroot? Surely
oh Dufresne.
no, Dufresne.
Yeah.
Okay. I was gonna say. My lowest carry. Oh, where is Dufresne for me? I don't even know.
Probably
I
in
think
B.
he's in B. Yeah, he's in B. I've got C and D tier. I've got in C
D
tier.
tier. I got no D tiers.
Oh, I have some. In C tier, I got Richard Guthrie. The
My
guy,
goodness.
the I can't remember his name, but the merchant guy we were talking about, how he survives till the end.
Can't be putting him in C tier.
And then these
My
two
goodness.
characters. Let me open up, see what they say. Dooley and Logan, who I never remember who they are. Like,
Logan was fucking Charlotte, and then Dooley. Who the fuck is Dooley? Is he the?
I think he's the guy who survives the whole show and is until Flint shoots him. I think. I maybe.
in
Or
like
maybe
at the
he's
end?
Silver's
He's
right
his
hand
final
man.
partner.
I don't. Yeah, something like that.
No, that one's. Oh,
I
wait,
honestly
Silver's the
don't.
one that dies for Silver in the season 3 finale is Dobbs.
Yeah, no, not Dobbs, not Dobbs. I don't know.
You're not
Essentially,
talking about the medic dude, right?
the medic dude. No. Just I don't even know where that guy is.
I put him in B tier.
This guy. I'll send a photo. I guess everyone on screen can see it right now.
In my lowest tier, that was C tier. I also have Mark Reed, who is not really a character, just in the last scene.
Yep.
And the evil bitch that was talking to Jack Rackham about Charles Vane eating people.
Oh,
Serves her.
I have her in B tier. Yeah, she's
that's
great.
the dude. The dude you sent is the one from the last episode. Oh, yeah, the second last episode, I guess.
Yep.
With Flint
All
on
right.
the island.
In D tier, I have the doctor guy because I just didn't remember him at all. The Mark Reed because I just they just come out of nowhere and I just don't care about them at all. And of course the pastor guy who I hate. I every scene he was in, I got this creepy feeling, and I'm like, is something wrong with this guy?
Where did I put him? Oh, at the bottom of B tier now.
Jesus,
Just below Charlotte.
oh my goodness.
I put the drowning dude so low. I love the drowning dude.
He's pretty great.
I think D tier implies that they're actively bad, not that you just don't care about them.
Yeah, D tier annoys me. Yeah, everyone has their own philosophies for these tier lists.
Yeah.
Yep.
I can actually see REs right now. Chad, he finally posted it, didn't he?
Yep.
So I think everything is as explained. He wasn't lying.
Yes, indeed. But that's it.
It's interesting. I think we both have Jack lower than most people would. But outside of that, I feel like we're pretty normal. People seem to love this Charles Vane fella.
Yep.
Even if he is only the 9th best character in the show.
Yep, true.
What a television program.
I
feel like if I reflect on my other tier lists, I think the only one with more S tiers would probably be Mad Men. Maybe The Sopranos, but those are both longer shows with a lot more characters.
Yeah.
So, and a lot more time to flesh out
I think
the
this
characters.
show is like perfect length. Like they ended it at the great point. Each season didn't feel too long or too short. I really liked it overall. Great show.
Yeah.
But
I like where it ended. I'm not disappointed and lusting after more.
Perfect. One day there'll be that Treasure Island movie or sequel they'll make, I'm sure. Because we'll become billionaires and we'll fund it ourselves, Kyle, all right? It'll be great.
Yes, maybe. I don't know if I would want it. I feel like it's over. Let it rest, EliteAri. Stop trying to fund outside properties. Speaking of thingies, did you ever watch the you got more?
No. Have you got more? What are you talking about?
Oh, I was gonna quickly say, did you ever end up watching that Rowan Ellis, the one video essay on black sails that exists?
I watched like the first 2 minutes and I was like, I need to think more about this.
That video is pretty fun. There is another one now that's like a Percy Jackson video that I didn't actually watch much. I watched like the first minute, not because I gave up on it, it was bad. I just was like, I'll watch this later. But there's one about like Percy Jackson where it like likens Black Sails and its narrative structure or something to Percy Jackson. So now there exists 3 video essays about Black Sails in existence.
Perfect.
And 33.33% of them. Until Ari makes his videos.
I'll make one eventually, yeah.
And I'm trying to make this Max video, maybe.
Yep.
We'll see. Right.
Anything
Do we want
else?
to speculate at the end of this or after we end the video on what we do next? I guess we'll do it after.
I
We'll
guess
leave the
we can
people.
say if anyone has suggestions, if you want us to watch
Yeah,
anything or do anything, put it in the comments. We'll read it. Um, yeah,
yeah.
and I've just been enjoying your comments a lot. So please, I love when you guys leave comments. So we'll read them all. I'll give them a heart or something. It's great. But that's it. That's Black
Indeed.
Sails.
Black
We did
Sails
it.
is over.
It's
I feel
over.
like you got to give it more of a send off. We love Black Sails. We love
Yep,
Max. She's the greatest character of all time,
she's
second only
great.
to Eleanor's grandmother. Um,
Yep,
what a
Flint is a
television
character
program.
for the
What
ages.
a 10 this television program is. It
Yep,
has climbed. Now, recency bias might be a thing, but I think it's hovering near that nonsense show Mad Men for best
good,
television program.
very good,
It's leaving Boardwalk and The Sopranos and House of the Dragon in the dust.
excellent.
Um,
All right, and with that,
but I. What
that's
about
it,
you, Ari?
everyone.
Is it better than Breaking Bad or whatever
Oh
shit
Jesus,
shows you like?
I think Black Sails is one of the most enjoyable shows I've ever watched.
That's a cop out
It's
answer. That's
it's
not what I
consistent.
asked.
Okay, it's tough. I haven't seen Breaking Bad in so long. Um, but right now I'm loving Black Sails. It would be easily in my top 5 like shows I've ever seen. I don't know where it would be though. I just haven't thought about that. It's always Better
Number
Call
two,
Saul,
that's
you
where
know.
it stands.
Maybe. One day I'll make a tier list or something. I'll put it on Ordinary Ari.
Make a
That's
top
it.
10 list.
That's
A
it for
scripted
now.
video, top 10 shows of all time. That's what
Oh
Ari's next video.
Jesus,
That's what it's gonna be.
that'd be so
Um,
much effort. I have to rewatch everything.
yeah.
All
um, we're
right.
leaving you. I don't
Yep.
want to leave you, chat. But
See you later,
that's
everyone.
it.
I hope you enjoyed this series. See you later.